days of taking it, we noticed clarity that we didn't notice before.
It's still helping me. I still notice a difference.
Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
1 in 2 kids is underhydrated. If your child doesn't seem themselves at times, they may not be hydrated enough. All new plant-powered Creative Roots gives kids the hydration they need with the fruit flavors they love and 1 gram of sugar. Find new Creative Roots in the kids' juice aisle.
What can employers do to best position themselves?
With every company in every industry, digital transformation has to be on the CEO's agenda.
And this is a game changer. Not having an intentionality right now will be a critical mistake.
With daily insights on the new now, this is Business Interrupted with EY.
If you need life insurance, SelectQuote can help you get it at a price you can afford, even if you're not in perfect health or were turned down by others.
SelectQuote found Tanya, who has type 2 diabetes, a $500,000 policy for only $44 a month. Rick has sleep apnea. We found him a $1.5 million policy for only $68 a month. And SelectQuote found Jacob, who is in excellent health, a $500,000 policy for only $20 a month.
Our secret? At SelectQuote, we aggressively comparison shop highly rated companies, including Pacific Life, American General, Prudential, Mutual of Omaha, and more, to find you the company with the best rates based on your needs. Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford, even if you're not in perfect health.
Call 1-800-709-0373. That's 1-800-709-0373.
SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Here's the thing about Dr. Albasha Hume. He had an uncommon ability to make people feel like they belonged. Dr. Hume was the men's health director at Open Cities in St. Paul, Minnesota, a facility that served disadvantaged communities, providing care regardless of a person's insurance or ability to pay. Noble work conducted by a noble man. Patients asked for him by name. So did colleagues. There were people working at the clinic who said they were there only because they wanted to be with Albasha. So it was obviously a great tragedy when he died of the coronavirus a week and a half ago at the age of 63. His final wish was to be buried in Tanzania, where he was born. So we'll wish him luck on that final journey. And speaking of noble people, we're also celebrating Lisa Berhanen today of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She lost her son to gun violence in 2009 and dedicated her life to action. Her resume ought to put her on the short list for sainthood. According to Penn Live, she worked in the school district. She taught classes in prison, served meals to the homeless, supervised a reentry home for women, and volunteered as a hospital chaplain. She was supremely kind, equally fierce, and she knew how to manage a project. After Lisa contracted the coronavirus, when she felt things taking a turn for the worse, she made lists. What she wanted at her funeral, what music to play, who should speak, and where they should sit. Lisa died earlier this month, so we're mourning for her family today, but also for the greater Harrisburg community and their irreplaceable loss. And that does it for this hour. I'm Joy Reid in for Nicole Wallace. I'll be back in a few hours at 7 p.m. Eastern, and our coverage continues with Chuck Todd right after this quick break.
Find better adventures together in the Hyundai Santa Fe. From the brand with more 2020 IIHS Top Safety Awards than Honda or Toyota.
When the Murrays started using Gain Ultra Flings, they fell in love with its irresistible scent. Looks like their dog Michelangelo did too. New Gain Ultra Flings with 2 times Oxyboost and Febreze.
How about new?
No. No way.
Come on, no. Only Discover has no annual fee on any card.
I'm a Delta technology advisor.
Oshish.
If you're a small business, we're with you.
Standing by you every step of the way. Did you just reward yourself for spending a perfectly reasonable amount of time on the couch with tacos from Grubhub? Grubhub's gonna reward you for that with a $5 off.
Press conference. The White House, after meeting with Poland's Department whistleblowers alleging serious episodes of misconduct and political interference under Attorney General Bill Barr. A grand jury has indicted all 3 defendants on murder charges in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And Senate Democrats this afternoon have blocked consideration of the Republican Party's police reform bill. But we're going to begin today with the verdict of public opinion involving the president's failure of leadership. A new poll, New York, Donald Trump would lose by 14 points if the election were held today. And that result is not an outlier anymore. Recent polls from Fox News, Quinnipiac, and CNN have all had Trump trailing Biden by 12, 8, and 14 points respectively. In fact, the average now is into double digits on the various sites that do polling averages. 2 new polls in battleground states show that double-digit lead nationally is trickling down. He's up 8. Biden is up 8 in Wisconsin, and Biden's up a point in Ohio. Results you might expect if the president were trailing nationally by those large margins. Now, the president has been pushing to reopen the country and restart the economy and reboot his campaign, which he sees basically essential to his re-election chances. And there is a growing alarm among some public health officials about what you see on your screen. There's a lot of curves going up. States like Texas, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Mississippi, all are reporting record spikes in cases. Hospitalizations, they're also spiking. Texas has had 12 straight days of record hospitalizations. Houston's ICU beds are at 97% capacity right now. Arizona has seen 9 days in a row of record hospitalizations. North Carolina is seeing a spike. So among others. And confirmed cases overall in the U.S. are at their highest levels on a daily basis since the U.S. was experiencing its first peak and its peak rate of deaths. Public health officials like Dr. Fauci are simply alarmed.
As you continue to get these cases, what you're going to start seeing, we don't want to see it, but it's going to happen, is increase in hospitalizations. And then you're going to get into trouble with getting back to the same kind of thing that we had when we were in trouble. So we really need to push hard to try and contain these infections by doing identification, isolation, and contact tracing, hopefully doing it in an effective way.
But let me ask you, Dr. Fauci, it was my understanding that in order for states to reopen, that they had to implement widespread testing. They had to have a plan for contact tracing. You're saying that hasn't happened.
Well, it's not working. I mean, I'm sure they are trying to do that, but what is happening, it's not working. You're opening up, and people are very likely, and you're not very likely, we're seeing it on TV, we're looking at it in the pictures in the newspapers, are doing things that you should not be doing.
Ever the diplomat, he wanted to say, well, it's not working, which is another way of saying it hasn't. The public might be thinking the same thing. Is the president who are out of work, and to mention the president is also struggling to address nationwide movements on racial justice, all as alarm bells are being sounded by his closest advisors about his fitness for high office. Joe Fryer is on the ground in Scottsdale, Arizona for us, a state that has set a record for hospitalizations for 9 consecutive days. Priscilla Thompson is in Houston, a hotspot within one of the nation's major coronavirus hotspots. Kerry Sanders is in Clearwater, Florida, state that basically high in new cases today, and also with us is Peter Baker, the chief White House correspondent for the New York Times and an Msnbc analyst. Joe Fryer, I want to start. We're going to move west to east here, so I'll start with you out west. Give me the situation in Arizona, and it's today's situation. We know that every day the governor has sort of increased his concern. We saw him allowing municipalities to make their own rules. Is he in a
We haven't heard anything about that yet. Busy people are out and about. You do see most people wearing masks. But a lot of the worry here is that when Arizona reopened last month, some experts say, yeah, it was fine to start reopening in May, but there needed to be more restrictions in place to sort of ease into it. And that's not what happened. And the result, some were too many places, especially restaurants and bars, were filled too much. Maybe people weren't wearing masks at first. They weren't social distancing. That's one of the biggest problems, because Arizona is like many other places across the country. Young people, the number of young people getting infected way higher than what we're seeing with some older people, and that's because they're the ones who are out and about here. I spoke with one young man last night here in Scottsdale. He said he had not been wearing a mask until the mandate came into play. Now he does wear a mask. One of the biggest worries here is going to be hospitalizations. Today, it was announced ICUs in the state are now 88% full. Yesterday, it was 84% full. I spoke with a former head of the state health. He fears that they're going to reach capacity. Hospitalizations in California are now up 29%, Chuck.
I want to play that bite for that interview, because honestly, it was alarming what that former Arizona health official. So let's play that bite.
The thing that I'm most concerned about right now is getting the hospitals prepared for what's coming, probably by about the 4th of July. You know,
I mean, he's basically saying we can't turn back time right now, so one of the major focuses would have to be just staffing up hospitals as prepared as possible to deal with what can you do to try and get things under control. Obviously, mask policies help, but also just maybe sharpening the punishments for people who aren't quite following the rules, businesses, things like that aren't doing their best to make sure that there's social distancing. Maybe trying to sharpen some of those policies so that people really feel like they might be punished if they aren't doing what's best.
Joe Fryer getting us started in Arizona. Joe, thank you. Let's move to Houston. Priscilla Thompson is on the ground there. And Priscilla, you're in a hot spot within a state that is a hot spot. We know that the governor is alarmed enough that he's asking for a voluntary stay at home with another day of 5,000 new cases, 4,000 new hospitals. Is he going to get ready to make that a mandatory order?
Well, he has signaled a mandatory order, a last resort, but with Houston at 97% hospital capacity, it is very possible that they will hit that very soon. And so you see the hospital preparing those surge plans. Here at Houston Methodist, they tell us that they're adding ICU beds, adding isolation areas and rooms, and as one official put it, we're preparing every minute of every day for the worst case scenario as these cases and hospitalizations continue to tick up. And you know, the governor not too long ago was saying that there's still an abundant amount of hospital beds left, and we certainly see him presenting a more urgent tone this week as we watch those numbers climb. And he actually just yesterday issued a new executive order that would put more restrictions on the large gatherings of 100 people or more. And he has also signaled that he could stop elective surgeries to free up some of those hospital beds. So it's likely that we'll see things like that happening before he were to consider another statewide shutdown, Chuck.
And Priscilla, there was some alarming news this morning. Local officials worried that the federal government was going to pull its support for some testing sites in Texas. And I saw within minutes of when we went to air that Senator John Cornyn, obviously a Republican senator in Texas running for re-election, he expressed concern about this as well and is asking the Trump administration to reverse this. What else are you hearing on the ground about this?
Well, he's not alone in that. A lot of officials here are very concerned. I know the Houston Health Department has also sent a letter urging that those resources remain here beyond the month of June. And in Dallas, they're looking at possibly bringing in third-party vendors to help with some of that testing. The one thing that officials here are saying is that even if the FEMA resources, the federal resources do go, the testing will stay. But that really will remain to be seen how they plan to work that out and accommodate for that, Chuck.
Priscilla Thompson in Houston for us. Priscilla, thank you. Now let me go to the state of Florida where we find Kerry Sanders. Cases up 5% in a day. How concerned are officials that we're starting to see exponential spread in Florida?
Well, the exponential spread appears to be in a lower age group, and it's expanding. So today was a record 5,000, let me see if I got the numbers here, 5,511 new cases of coronavirus. But the age is decreasing from what was 37 to 34. Now they're talking about in the 18 to 26 age group where they're most concerned about the spread of the virus. Now, what you see is while the numbers are going up, the death rate is going down, and the government is talking as if that is a good thing, but the concern, of course, is that young people then go see their parents, see their grandparents, and it spreads, and it keeps the coronavirus moving throughout the community. I am in Clearwater Beach, which is part of Pinellas County, and where I am right now, you must wear a mask like I have on right now if you go into a business. What is confusing to so many people is wearing a mask, going into a business here in Clearwater has been required now for just 12 minutes. It just went into effect. You have 67 counties, multiple cities in the state, and depending on where you are, it's a patchwork of regulations of what people need to do. On top of the fact that, coronavirus doesn't really respect geographic boundaries of cities and counties, you have a lot of tourists who are coming down here and they're like, oh, I don't have to wear a mask. That's great. I just came from someplace where they may wear a mask in Massachusetts. I'm down here on vacation. So it's actually causing more confusion and problems. One that the governor says he philosophically believes should be a local issue resolved by the local governments.
Right. I want to play a little bit of what the governor said today because he's been somebody that wanted positive press a couple of months ago thinking that they had been in the clear. Let me play his remarks today.
Ultimately, we've got to trust people to
make good decisions. I mean, there's a 10-person limit in Miami-Dade County for gatherings right now. It's been that way the whole time. They're in phase 1. Have you seen any gatherings in the last 3 weeks that have been more than 10 people? Let's just be real. I mean, you know, you have what you can put out, but then you also have a divergence between what the requirements are and what the compliance is. And I think what we've seen is, you know, if you follow the guidelines, you follow those phase 1 guidelines here, if you follow the phase 2 guidelines in other parts of the state, everything works out fine.
That sounded like a governor who believes they're still making all the right decisions. It's the public's fault.
And, you know, I'm in South Florida. I'm over here on the West Coast, and what I'm observing is not necessarily what the governor says is happening. I'm seeing people out, you know, right here. We've set up in this pretty background, but a block from here, I'm at the beach, and it's right along the sidewalk. It's packed with people who are not wearing masks. Probably don't even know that the rule just went into effect now 14 minutes ago, Chuck.
Kerry Sanders in Clearwater, Florida. Forrest, Kerry, I appreciate it. Stay safe, my friend. Thank you. Let's hope we can get through this in Florida. Let me bring in Peter Baker. And Peter, I want to play for you what John Thune said today, because it is easily the most direct critique of the president's leadership by a Republican senator not named Mitt Romney that I've heard in months. Take a listen.
Trump has a problem with the middle electorate, with independents, and they're the people who are going to decide a national election. So, you know, I think he can win those back, but it'll probably require not only a message that deals with substance and policy, but I think a message that conveys perhaps different tone.
Peter Baker, John Thune is not a guy that likes to stir the pot inside the party. He's not somebody that normally brings criticism that he'd like to level into the public sphere. It feels as if a lot more Republicans are realizing these double-digit polls are not outliers.
I guess, right, Chuck, you and I have seen this before with plenty of presidents who get in trouble. This is actually normal. And what has been abnormal is 3 years of not seeing members of the Republican Party break with the president when his numbers were down. When the numbers now have gotten so far down that they're really, really worried. They're worried not just about the White House, not just about whether President Trump will get a second term, but whether they'll hold on to the Senate, whether they'll win or lose seats in the House. The Senate is so close, as you know, of course, 53-47. If they were to, a lot of these battleground states are in Republican territory right now. A number of Democrats seem to be surging in some of those races. And I think, John Thune and other Republicans are looking beyond President Trump and saying, okay, what about us? What's going to happen if he goes down and brings a lot of us with him?
It does seem as if the president is just not listening to he's not reacting the way a normal politician in this situation would react. He's not, you talk to people close to him, I do, they supposedly convey his problems to him. Whether he just doesn't believe it or he just doesn't know any other way, I do think a lot of Republicans are wondering, are you not seeing what the rest of us are seeing?
Yeah, I think even his own advisors are frustrated at this point, trying to get through to him, make sure he sees what they are seeing, and yet understanding that they are risking, the wrath, the volcanic kind of temper if they are too blunt with him, right? The people who have been too honest with him about his own political troubles with polls find themselves on the receiving end of a pretty sharp tongue. And that seems, there's a lot of talk right now whether there'll be some sort of shakeup at the top. The rally, obviously, in Tulsa continues to sting. These numbers are just devastating for an incumbent president at this point. It's only June. We've seen Canada come back from further behind by November, but it's a pretty tough road for an incumbent who's usually in a stronger position by this point.
And here's the other thing, Peter. The virus is obviously the single most important story that everybody is dealing with as a country. Everything has been shut down or altered due to this. And he's tweeting about Mike Flynn, flag burning. Basically, he wants to deal with any other issue other than what's on his plate.
Yeah, he would like us to think that this is over. In fact, his tweet the other day, maybe yesterday, I think it was, said, "We did a great job on the coronavirus." coronavirus. We did, past tense. It's not over, as Dr. Fauci told Congress yesterday, as Admiral Garrar told Congress yesterday. We're a long way from being over, but the president would just as soon not focus attention on that, hoping that the country is kind of tired of that and not really focused on it. Those reports you just aired from Arizona, Texas, Florida, these are all states where they're seeing big spikes and they're seeing big impact. It's going to hurt the economy as well as the public health, because who's going to reopen businesses if the public health seems to be in dire straits? And these are states that the president needs to win. All three states that you just showed are states he won 4 years ago. That he's counting on winning this time around. If those are states that are suffering badly at this point, 2 or 3 months from now, he's got a very, very tough road to hoe.
And there was some arrogance in the state leadership of those states. They were all thought, we're going to be great. Come on, pro sports. Come on, NBA. Now the NBA may be regretting ever doing business with Florida under these conditions now. It may be that these states also shut down our whatever hope we had for a shortened sports season as well. Peter Baker, the Chief White House correspondent of the New York Times, always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you. Up ahead, more on the trouble in Texas. A top virus expert in hard-hit Houston joins me. And later, an appeals court orders an end to the case against Michael Flynn on the same day that career officials testify that politics drove decisions inside Bill Barr's Justice Department. Neil Katyal will join us on what all of this means.
Don't bring that mess around here, Evan! Whoa! Don't do it. Don't you dare. I don't think so!
It's okay, big fella. We're gonna get through this together.
Nice rip, Robbie. When you bundle home and auto insurance through Progressive, you get more than just a big discount. I'm gonna need you to leave. You get relentless protection.
With VA mortgage rates suddenly dropping to near record lows, my team at New Day USA is helping more veterans refinance than ever. The New Day VA Streamline Refi is the reason why. It lets you shortcut the loan process and refinance with no income verification, no appraisal, and no out-of-pocket cost. One call can save you $2,000 every year. Call my team at New Day USA right now.
One call can save you $2,000. Call 1-844-451-1593.
We've all got some miles to make up. Miles to the job site, the campsite, and anything else we set our sights on. So let's roll up our sleeves, because we've got miles to make up.
Go to ram.com to shop and buy. Right now, you can get 0% financing for 72 months on the 2020 Ram 1500.
The Shark Vac Mop combines powerful suction with spray mopping to lock away debris and absorb wet messes, all in one disposable pad. Just vacuum, spray mop, and toss. The Shark Vac Mop, a complete clean, all in one pad.
How can Experian Boost help you?
Experian Boost is a game changer. My credit limit went from $1,000 to $14,000 now. I feel like I'm in complete control.
Boost your credit scores instantly, free, only at Experian.com/boost. Introducing Total, an entire gym and personal trainer that fits beautifully into your home. Total combines expert coaching with 200 pounds of digital weight. Whether you're looking to build strength or get lean, there's a coach and program to help you get there. And just like a personal trainer, Total dynamically adjusts the weight for each exercise. But the most amazing thing isn't what it can do, but what it knows you can do. Learn more at Total.com.
This is a tale of two kitties. This kitty uses ordinary litter. This kitty uses pretty litter, the world's smartest cat litter, and it's delivered right to your door. Its ultra-light, super absorbent formula traps odors, and it does something no ordinary clay litter can do. Pretty litter's color-changing crystals make it easy to monitor your cat's health, helping to avoid serious illness. She's switching to Pretty Litter. Smart move. Try Pretty Litter with free 30 days. When you sign up, get free delivery. Go to prettylitter.com.
Welcome back. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he is considering new restrictions now that his state is reporting more than 5,000 new coronavirus cases 2 days in a row. As we told you yesterday, Abbott is urging Texans to stay home, but not requiring it. It's a shift from last week when the governor insisted the virus outbreak was under control.
We are now in a situation where we are coexisting with COVID-19, where we do not have to choose between either returning to jobs or protecting healthcare. We do have the tools and the strategies in place where we can achieve both of those ends. There is a massive outbreak of COVID-19 across the state of Texas. Today, we will have more than 5,000 people test positive once again. We are looking at greater restrictions, and some could be localized.
Dr. Peter Hotez is warning that Houston could become the new epicenter of this virus. He's the dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at the Baylor College of Medicine. Dr. Hotez, it's nice to have you on again. Sadly, under circumstances that I feel like you saw coming, you and pretty much so many members of your field saw coming. What could have prevented this resurgence in Texas? What were the mistakes?
Yeah, you're right. You're very much right. Unfortunately, this surge was both predicted and predictable, and it's really worrisome. We're looking now at almost a vertical slope in terms of the number of cases. This very rapid acceleration. If you've ever seen what's called an exponential curve, what that looks like, it stays flat for a while, then goes up almost vertically, and that's what's happening here in Houston. We're seeing similar numbers in San Antonio, in Austin, in Dallas, and it's not just the numbers, because some are asserting that, this is just due to increased testing. We're actually seeing this big surge on the hospitals and the ICUs, and so I don't see what brings this back. We just today got some new modeling estimates from the University of Pennsylvania and their policy lab, and they're looking pretty dire, pretty apocalyptic. So I think we're going to have to take some aggressive action. What happened was we did a good job initially. We had that initial peak, and the governor made a good decision to shut things down. Didn't want to reproduce what we saw in New York, and we never had a big surge back in March and April, but then the modelers told us we had to keep it shut down throughout the month of May, and nobody was prepared to do that. And we didn't put in all the belts and suspenders for public health that we needed to, and now we've got this situation that we're facing currently.
Do you have enough contact tracers, enough tests in the state or not? Because this is one of the confusing issues at times where the federal government has decided, they've washed their hands, right? They say it's all up to the states. They've made the decision, they're not going to take the lead on this. What is the situation in Texas with testing and tracing?
Well, it even goes beyond testing and tracing. I mean, most of the pieces are there. It's just the scale and scope is not adequate. We do have testing. It needs to be expanded. We do have contact tracers. They're not enough. One piece that we are missing is an app-based system where we can look for clusters of cases of fever and cough. Some people call that syndromic surveillance. There's several ones out there. So to build in, to reinforce that, we don't even have epidemiologic models for all of our cities. And we don't have that regular system of public health communication. So it's better than it was, but it's still not commensurate with all the effort that went into the economic recovery. There was never really that recognition that you need to do both in order to sustain that economic recovery. And I'm particularly worried about some of the people in the low-income neighborhoods, because I think those are the ones that are disproportionately going into hospital right now.
Well, and that's what we saw in New York City a lot. The summer was always expected to be a bit of a reprieve, the moment where we all could exhale a little bit, and in that sense, all of you guys were saying it's possible. It'll be a little bit better, and then we'll prepare for a fall. That doesn't look like it's going to be the case. This looks like we're about to surpass our peak. I think in the next couple of days, our national peak. What does this mean for what's facing us in the fall now?
Yeah, it's the whole American Southwest, isn't it? It's Texas, it's Oklahoma, it's Arizona, Nevada, and as we know, there's plenty of sunlight, there's plenty of warmth, and at least here in Houston, there's plenty of humidity, so those are not working in our favor. There's speculation that maybe with all of the hot weather, that in fact it's the opposite. People are indoors and air conditioning and getting exposed more because of that, and that may be a factor, but that's pretty speculative at this point. This is a new virus. We still don't know all of the factors responsible for transmission, but the impact is clear. We are facing a dire public health situation in Texas and a couple of other southwestern states right now.
And we haven't even hit the fall. Dr. Peter Hotez, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your expertise with us, and fingers crossed that somehow these models will get better. But it doesn't look good. Thank you, sir. Up ahead, it's looking like last night may end up being a Super Tuesday for progressive Democrats after all. We're going to break down what we know, what we don't know yet, as the votes continue to be counted. Plus, the Senate deadlocks over policing reform as Democrats block the Republicans' attempt to bring a bill to the floor because they believe it does not go far enough. Is there any chance to get something passed in this calendar year?
Magazine, Vanity Fair, and Rolling Stone are all talking about Jon Stewart's Irresistible. It's brilliantly hilarious. Jon Stewart is back.
Are there any questions for the Colonel? Anyone? Bueller?
Jon Stewart's Irresistible, rated R, Friday.
1 in 2 kids is underhydrated. If your child doesn't seem themselves at times, they may not be hydrated enough. Creative Roots gives kids the hydration they need with the fruit flavors they love and 1 gram of sugar. Find new Creative Roots in the kids' juice aisle.
Did you know Prilosec OTC can stop frequent heartburn before it begins? Heartburn happens when stomach acid refluxes into the esophagus. Prilosec OTC uses a unique delayed release formula that helps it pass through the tough stomach acid. It then works to turn down acid production, blocking heartburn at the source. With just 1 pill a day, you get 24-hour heartburn protection. Prilosec OTC. 1 pill a day, 24 hours, 0 heartburn.
Right now is the time for action. That's why USAA is giving payment relief options to eligible members so they can pay for things like groceries before they worry about their insurance or credit card bills. Discover all the ways we're helping members today.
When managing diabetes, you can't always stop for a finger stick. With a Freestyle Libre 14-day system, a continuous glucose monitor, you don't have to. With a painless 1-second scan, you can check your glucose with a smartphone or reader, so you can stay in the moment, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Ask your doctor for a prescription for the Freestyle Libre 14-day system. You can do it without finger sticks. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
Joe Biden's failed old liberal ideas would crush our economy just as it's recovering. Higher taxes on families, crippling regulations, trade deals that ship jobs to China. President Trump led us to the strongest economy in history. He did it his way, not the Washington way. And he's doing it again. Renewing, restoring, rebuilding. 2.5 million new jobs, the biggest jobs increase ever. And he's just getting started.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
When you need brutal honesty.
This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about 400 years of racism.
When you need answers first thing in the morning.
What needs to be done to make ballots ready to go for the presidential election in November?
You need to go deep inside the story.
What's a policy change in policing that you would like to see enacted?
And hear from someone who's been there.
Who's telling the truth and who's lying every day. That's the news story Americans want to hear.
You need your Morning Joe, only on MSNBC.
Welcome back on Capitol Hill today. A former prosecutor in the Roger Stone case testified that there was pressure from the highest levels of the Department of Justice to cut Stone a break on his sentencing, simply because of his relationship with President Trump. Assistant U.S. Attorney Aaron Zielinski, who worked on and then withdrew from the Stone case over the Justice Department's actions, said Stone's treatment was simply unheard of.
What I saw that Roger Stone was being treated differently from every other defendant. He received breaks that are, in my experience, unheard of. What I heard repeatedly was that this leniency was happening because of Stone's relationship to the president, that the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia was receiving heavy pressure from the highest levels of the Department of Justice, and that his instructions to us were based on political considerations.
Let's bring in Casey Hunt now. Casey, that was part of a hearing that is about the politicizing of the Justice Department. What else did we hear? And I imagine, I understand there was a little bit of weird drama with some of the House Republicans.
There was some drama, Chuck, you're right. But to start with your question about the substance here, I think you captured well what this prosecutor, Aaron Zelinsky, is alleging happened in this case. He's saying that the pressure that he came under, that his office came under to reduce the sentence, and he, of course, left the case after the Department of Justice reduced its recommendation for the sentence length for Roger Stone, was motivated simply because Stone had a personal relationship with the president and that was wrong. And he identified that as coming from, or rather that he found out about said pressure from another official in the U.S. Attorney's Office. He named that person, and there were a couple others as well. But Republicans basically accused him of making these allegations based on hearsay. They said that he didn't have any direct knowledge, that this was something that he had heard from these officials, and therefore the allegations weren't relevant. As for some of the moments a little tough and perhaps not on this topic, there were questions raised about why Mr. Zelinsky didn't appear in person. He said it was because he had a newborn baby at home and the child's pediatrician recommended he not appear in Congress in person. There were suggestions that he didn't have the same guts as others who had decided to appear in person. And then Jim Jordan, of course, wasn't wearing a mask for most of the hearing, and at one point Jerry Nadler had to essentially threaten to anybody that wasn't wearing one that he would not actually allow them to use their time in the hearing.
And Casey, the other big story on Capitol today was on the Senate side, police reform. I talked to Cory Booker earlier today. He is hopeful that this rejection of the Senate Republican bill will bring Senate Republicans to the table the same way when they rejected the last stimulus bill. What is your sense that will happen?
Yeah, Chuck, I watched that interview, and I thought that what Senator Booker had to say about his personal relationship with Tim Scott was noteworthy, and it does seem as though Senator Scott has a lot of personal investment and sincere interest in working on this, and I think your interview with Senator Booker reflected and acknowledged that. I don't know, though, that there is going to be much goodwill left here, and I think the answer to your question lies in just how much pressure Republicans are feeling from a political perspective to do more to show that they care about the issue or that they're trying to get something done. And I mean, the reality is trust between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer is possibly at an all-time low, which is really saying something. So it's hard to see exactly how we move forward here. But I will leave open the possibility that that personal relationship could produce some results.
I was fascinated that Cory Booker was using a specific messaging by saying Mitch McConnell was standing in the way of bipartisanship, and I thought it was an interesting messaging point and an attempt to separate some Republicans from McConnell. Whether that they will take that invitation from Cory Booker is a whole other story, but I thought it was noteworthy new messaging that I hadn't heard as much from other senators before. Casey Hunt, busy day on Capitol Hill. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
I'm going to talk to Neil Katyal about the politicization of the Department of Justice next, but before we go to break, an important note. NASA just announced it is honoring the agency's first African-American female engineer, naming its D.C. base of operations the Mary W. Jackson NASA headquarters. Jackson broke through racial and gender barriers in the 1950s while helping launch American astronauts into space. In 2016, her amazing story was chronicled in the best-selling book and hit film Hidden Figures. Last year, Jackson posthumously received the Congressional Gold Medal. We'll be right back.
The Shark Vac Mop combines powerful suction with spray mopping to lock away debris and absorb wet messes, all in one disposable pad. Just vacuum, spray mop, and toss. The Shark Vac Mop, a complete clean, all in one pad.
At BMW, we know leaving the road wasn't easy, but anticipating our return taught us to appreciate every drive. The exhilaration of the ultimate adventure. Moments spent with your favorite co-pilots. And the freedom to explore just because. Our time to rejoin the road is finally here. Get back on the road with 0.9% financing plus no payments for 90 days.
You hear that? That's your weather deck crying for help. While you do nothing, it's inviting those geese over for target practice. And now look who's coming to barbecue. Your deck's worst nightmare. Not today. Today, let's stain with the #1 rated semi-transparent stain. Because if you stain your deck today, they can't stain your deck tomorrow. There, exclusively at the Home Depot.
The New York Times Magazine hails Jon Stewart's back with Irresistible.
Oh my God, I'm hyperventilating.
It's the comedy event of the summer.
What do you think of that right there? Sorry, not you, Dot.
Jon Stewart's Irresistible. Rated R. In theaters and on demand Friday.
Ta-da! Did you know Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need?
I should get a quote.
Do it.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Prescription eyewear can be really expensive, but here's the secret. Glasses don't actually cost that much to make. Surprise! Especially when you design your own eyewear and then sell it directly to your customers. Like we do. Oh hi, we're Warby Parker. Our glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses. And the best part? You can try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com. Makespace is storage without the struggle.
Hi, Ben from Makespace. Store it, keep it safe, and when you need it back, just use the app.
Way better than self-storage.
Book a no-contact appointment today. Use the code STRESSFREE for $100 off.
For everyone like you making their business work online, there are people searching, headed in your direction. So since people are still looking for what you do, GoDaddy is making it possible for you to create a website for free. Start now at GoDaddy.com.
Welcome back. For months, House Democrats have wanted to question Bill Barr under oath, and we found out today that they will get their chance in July. The Justice Department announced that the Attorney General would testify before the House Judiciary Committee July 28th. Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler had been preparing to subpoena Barr. That announcement came as Aaron Zelinsky was testifying about political influence at the Justice Department in the sentencing of Trump associate Roger Stone. And hours after an appeals court ordered a judge to dismiss the criminal case against former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn because the Justice Department wished to drop the case, even though Flynn had pleaded guilty not once but twice to lying to the FBI. Well, with me now is Neil Katyal, former acting Solicitor General, professor of law at Georgetown University, NBC News legal. And Neil, it wasn't just Aaron Zelinsky that testified about one action. There was other people that testified, and I want to play an astonishing quote here that was unlike. Aaron Zelinsky was careful not to name Barr. This next person was to take a listen.
I was privileged to serve in the Department of Justice under 2 Republican and 1 Democratic president, and I am here because I believe that William Barr poses the greatest threat in my lifetime to our rule of law and to public trust in it. That is because he does not believe in its core principle that no person is above the law.
Neil, we heard both in big ways and in minute ways how at least accusations of basically personal political interference.
Absolutely. I mean, it was an astounding hearing, Chuck. You had basically all levels of the Justice Department today represented in that hearing. You had career prosecutor, an assistant United States attorney, Aaron Zelinsky, saying there was political interference in the Stone investigation, that I was pressured to go easy on him because he was the president's friend, that I would lose my job otherwise, perhaps. You had the career supervisor of the Antitrust Division, John Ilias, saying similar things about antitrust, actually the reverse, that they wanted to use the antitrust laws to go after the president's enemies and was pressured to do that. And then you had that clip you just played by Don Ayer, who is an incredibly conservative lawyer. He was George W. Bush's number 2 person at the Justice Department, so he's not some lefty like me or something like that, and he testified that this was on its way to being worse than Watergate. And so, yes, you're right to say that that Barr has said today that he's going to testify on July 28th. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, this guy's been scared to go to the Hill and testify in the House for months and months and months. He sets testimony and then he backs down. And, you know, the idea that we have to wait 5 weeks for his testimony, after hearing what we heard today, after seeing all of the drama about the Southern District of New York over the weekend, you know, and after his episodes at Lafayette Square and tear gassing people, I just find unconscionable that, you know, I think if someone accused me of those things when I was at the Justice Department, I'd go to the next day and say, hey, I want to testify, not wait 5 weeks to tell my side of the story.
Let me reverse that question. Should House Democrats be trying to get him there sooner? I mean, you know, is there another way to hold him accountable? They feel as if he's basically been an unaccountable executive branch employee, and that he has basically avoided any tough questioning from the Democratic majority in the House. He's gone before the Senate, but that is, you know, Republican controlled. He's certainly faced some tough questions from Democrats, but should House Democrats be pushing harder here and sooner themselves?
Yes. I mean, look, the primary culprit here are the top leaders of the Justice Department, which has politicized the thing, and the president in ways that are, you know, beyond all recognition from anyone who served there in a prior Republican or Democrat administration. And I include, by the way, folks who served in the Nixon administration. This is getting to be absurd. But I do think, you know, your question is right. I don't think that the House has done enough to exercise oversight, and to sit and wait 5 weeks more for Barr's testimony when we've been waiting like a year already is getting absurd. And so, yes, they should subpoena him. They should threaten to use the funding power against him. There's a lot of tools that they have. They need to exercise them all.
It has been odd at how unwilling, and I don't know why fully, unless they feel like it's a distraction from other issues. Let me ask you about the action today in the D.C. Circuit on the Michael Flynn case. I've seen some legal analysis that says it ends it, but I heard Barbara McQuaid, a former attorney, she said to me earlier today that she thought it was quite possible that the full circuit might say, you know what, let's listen to this one more time. What's your sense of what's going to happen here?
Well, the full circuit doesn't like to hear cases very much as a whole. They do so incredibly rarely. But if there's a case to be heard, this is it. I mean, this is a really silly, absurd decision, Chuck. It's not going to stand the test of time. It's absurd on the idea that a judge can't even inquire into illegitimate machinations by political officials. And it's particularly absurd on the idea that someone can go run to the federal appeals court before the trial court is even ruled. I mean, it's called a court of appeals for a reason. There has to be something to appeal. Here, the trial judge hasn't even, all he wanted to do was have a hearing to inquire. He hadn't ruled in any one way, shape, or form. So it is a decision really out of step with mainstream legal thinking.
Could Judge Sullivan appeal to the Supreme Court? Or would he have to ask for what could he do next?
There are two different paths. Judge Sullivan could either go to ask the full Court of Appeals, or he could go to the Supreme Court directly. I suspect he'd do the former almost as a matter of respect for them, because, after all, he's a lower court judge in that circuit, and I would suspect that that's the right prudent thing to do. The other thing that can happen, Chuck, is that the judges on the D.C. circuit, our nation's second highest court, can on their own vote to hear the case. And so that very well may happen as well.
Neil Katyal, former acting Solicitor General, professor at Georgetown, and of course an NBC News legal analyst. Always a pleasure to get your perspective, sir. Thanks for coming on. Up next, it is looking like it was a pretty big primary night for Progressive. We're going to break down what it means for November next and update some numbers that we don't have full results for yet. Right after this.
This is the Tempur-Pedic Breeze, and its mission is to make sleep feel cool. So no more night sweats, no more nocturnal baking, or polar ice cap air conditioner mode. Because the Tempur-Pedic Breeze delivers superior cooling from cover to core, helping you sleep cool all night long. During the Tempur-Pedic Summer of Sleep, save $500 on all Tempur-Breeze mattresses and experience your coolest sleep this summer with our best breeze savings of the year.
The Shark Vac Mop combines powerful suction with spray mopping to lock away debris and absorb wet messes, all in one disposable pad. Just vacuum, spray mop, and toss. The Shark Vac Mop, a complete clean, all in one pad.
How can Experian Boost help you?
Oh, I love it. Seriously, it was amazing. I raised my credit score. At first, I thought it was just a commercial on TV, but now it actually really helped me out. Woo!
Boost your credit scores instantly, free at Experian.com/boost.
Veterans, how can one phone call save you $2,000 a year? By refinancing your VA loan at today's incredibly low rates at New Day USA. New Day's VA Streamline Refi is the quickest and easiest refi they've ever offered. You can lower your payments by this time next month without having to verify your income, without getting your home appraised, and there's no money out of pocket. Call New Day right now.
Call 1-888-670-1056.
And that protects our customers 24/7.
Sorry I'm late, everybody, and apologies for my appearance.
You look fine. We were just talking about how customers...
I look like a wanted poster. I didn't have time to get my beard routine in this morning, so...
What beard routine?
Well, the key is maple nectar. Gives it that sheen.
Is there something wrong with my screen?
Jamie, what are you talking about?
You're right, Alan. We should be talking about bundling home and auto with Progressive, not this luscious mane of mine.
Jamie, do you know what a beard is?
From roof to foundation, the damage to your home can be devastating from clogged gutters, leaking roofs, rotting wood and fascia, and flooded basements. Protect your entire home with Leaf Filter, the nation's #1 rated gutter protection system. Once our ladders go up, you can put yours down forever.
One of the things that I like the most is that I don't have to get back on the ladder anymore.
Leaf Filter starts by cleaning, sealing, and realigning your gutters. We then install our micro mesh screen over your existing gutters, which is guaranteed to filter out everything except for water.
Trying other products is what made us finally go to Leaf Filter.
And Leaf Filter's lifetime transferable warranty makes it an extraordinary value.
Leaf Filter's going to make my home more valuable, especially when I go to sell it.
Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate. Call or log on today and save 15%.
We're Carvana, the company who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we've created a brand new way for you to sell your car. Whether it's a year old or a few years old, we want to buy your car. So go to Carvana and enter your license plate, answer a few questions, and our techno wizardry calculates your car's value and gives you a real offer in seconds. When you're ready, we'll come to you, pay you on the spot, and pick up your car. That's it. So ditch the old way of selling your car and say hello to the new way at Carvana.
Welcome back. If it's Wednesday, we typically have some election results, but nothing is typical anymore, especially not elections in the midst of a pandemic. Votes are still being counted. In fact, votes are still being shipped in the mail. But it looks like progressive Democrats may have had a good night. Among the races we're still watching in New York, progressive challenger Jamal Bowman is declaring victory in his bid to oust House Foreign Affairs Chairman Elliot Engel. Bowman has a commanding lead, but there are still plenty of uncounted ballots. And in Kentucky's Democratic Senate primary, the race to take on Mitch McConnell, the National Party-backed candidate Amy McGrath is up slightly on progressive State Representative Charles Booker, but there is a lot of votes still outstanding there. Here to break it down with me and what happened last night is David Wasserman, House editor for the Cook Political Report, NBC NBC News contributor. It's so weird to me, Mr. Wasserman, that Kentucky is still counting. They're the fastest counting state, them in Virginia, but it's a new world. So let me start there. What do we know about what's out, and what does that tell you about Booker's chances of closing the gap?
Well, somewhere between 80 to 90% of the vote is out, Chuck, and we have none of Louisville. We won't know for another 5-6 days. We have virtually none of Lexington, and so look, this is almost as if we had next to no results. Now, Amy McGrath is up 6 points right now in the 10% we do have. Look, the fact that Louisville is all out means that Booker has more than enough votes left to overcome that.
That's for sure. Let's go to the New York House races. I want to start with what appears to be the predicted big upset, and that's Bowman over Engel. Do we have an idea of how many votes are left to count? And does Bowman? I mean, it looks to me he's got a big enough lead, but we just don't know how many ballots are still left, or do we?
Well, we would expect, based on the figures that Westchester and the New York City boards of elections have provided, that total turnout in the district, if everyone sent back their absentee ballots, might be somewhere in the 60 to 90,000 range. Right now, there have been about 44, 45,000 votes counted. And look, Jamal Bowman has a massive lead. He's ahead 27 points right now. And based on the patterns that we've seen coming in, it's possible Bowman will have won white voters by the end of the day in this Democratic primary. And whenever you see an upset of this magnitude, of a 16-term incumbent, a House committee chair for Bears like Eliot Engel, there are multiple factors at play. It's not just the fact that he's a progressive challenger. It's the fact that Engel didn't go back to the district during the first couple months of the pandemic. The fact that he was caught on a hot mic. So these, as you know, Chuck, tend to cascade.
Let's talk about a neighbor of Eliot Engel's, Carolyn Maloney. She got a scare last time, and, what are we looking at here? It looks to, I assume now we're just waiting for all ballots to be counted, because this is, that's pretty tight. 500 votes is the last I saw, I think.
That's right. Now, this is actually a rematch because Maloney beat Patel 59 to 41% in the 2018 primary, the same day that Joe Crowley went down to AOC. But this is tighter, and Maloney became chair of the Oversight Committee when Elijah Cummings passed away, and the outstanding votes, according to most of the New York insiders on the ground I've spoken with, are probably going to be friendlier to Maloney than the ones that have been counted so far, because the absentees are likely to skew whiter, a little bit higher income. That's Maloney's base. It's more of the Brooklyn and Queens section of the district that's younger, a little bit more hipster and agitating for change, and that's where Maloney's run weakest. So at the end of the day, I think the odds are still a little better than 50-50 that she survives.
All right, I'm out of time. I was going to ask you about Virginia 5. Let me just ask it to you this way. Have you moved that to lean R or toss-up? Virginia 5.
We moved that to lean R, and Democrats need a perfect storm to be able to win it, but that storm could be brewing. Cam Webb's a good candidate.
Dave Wasserman, Cook Political Report, guru of all things, especially when you're watching on election nights, that's for sure. Mr. Wasserman, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir, and we'll be right back.
Land Rover, above and beyond. The New York Times Magazine hails Jon Stewart is back with Irresistible.
Why do we accept the way the media and political parties spend money?
$20 says I do better with fear than you do with shame.
I would just like people to think about that if they want to.
Irresistible, rated R, Friday.
suffering from burning, tingling, or stabbing pain in your feet? Get relief, finally, with Magalife Pain Relieving Foot Cream, while also restoring cracked, damaged, and itchy skin. And get living.
Available at your local retailer. They were angels and superheroes, cheerleaders, storytellers, and shoulders to cry on. They were movie makers, birthday bakers. They believed in you, and they still do. When it's time for you to make the best choice for them, you need expert advice. At A Place for Mom, our senior advisors will guide you to the right assisted living, memory care, or home care options for the ones you love.
The Shark Vac Mop combines powerful suction with spray mopping to lock away debris and absorb wet messes, all in one disposable pad. Just vacuum, spray mop, and toss. The Shark Vac Mop, a complete clean, all in one pad.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
I wish I could shake your hand.
Granted. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Why would your kids need a Greenlight debit card? Imagine a debit card and app designed to help them develop healthy financial habits, to teach them how to save and encourage them to set their own goals. Now imagine the difference it could make in their lives, in their futures. Greenlight.
We are KiwiCo, and we deliver hands-on STEM projects designed to inspire young innovators. Kids of all ages can explore science, engineering, art, and more. Get 30% off. Visit trykiwico.com. Must be 18 or older to log on.
Meet Gravity, the original weighted blanket for sleep, stress, and anxiety. Gravity is the only weighted blanket demonstrated to improve sleep and reduce stress. Now available in cooling for summer.
For everyone like you making their business work online, there are people searching, headed in your direction. So since people are still looking for what you do, GoDaddy is making it possible for you to create a website for free. Start now at GoDaddy.com.
Welcome back. Earlier this hour in Charleston, South Carolina, city crews officially took down a statue of former Vice President John C. Calhoun. The 110-foot monument stood in a public park, only a few blocks from the site of the June 2015 church massacre that left 9 black parishioners dead. Calhoun, who served under John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson, was one of the most ardent defenders of slavery, calling it a positive good for the nation. The Charleston City Council voted unanimously on the resolution to take down the statue last night, and crews worked over 17 hours to bring it down, to great applause from gathering crowds. That's all for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Daily. And if it's Wednesday, we have an all-new Chuck Toddcast. Take a look wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The Beat with Ari Melber starts right now. Good evening, Ari.
Good evening, Chuck. Thank you very much. Welcome to The Beat. I am Ari Melber. And we have a big newscast tonight. Top DOJ prosecutors making explosive allegations under oath against Bill Barr and Donald Trump. Later in the show, Dr. Fauci fact-checking Trump as he downplays the pandemic. And a very special panel. We're going to get to that. It's something you won't see anywhere else or even usually on The Beat. That's later tonight. We're also staying on stories of protests and policing. We have a new update on an important one later in the show. So that's all ahead. But we begin with something truly unusual today. This testimony from normally tight-lipped federal prosecutors. Indeed, you can actually go through an entire 4-year presidential term and never see what I'm about to show you right now. Because like Bob Mueller himself, prosecutors in general, and certainly those who served under him, tend to err on the side of no comment. In fact, even years after leaving government, they don't typically discuss what was internally debated or clashed about in the prosecutorial office, unless there is an exception, unless they think their constitutional oath and that justice itself demands it. And so, here we are. The scene with social distancing, DOJ veterans who worked with Mueller and Barr being sworn in and then blowing the whistle on what they alleged was improper political pressure to abuse the DOJ's powers, the power to charge or not charge, to imprison Americans or not, and to do so for Donald Trump's political and personal agenda. This is serious stuff, and all of it puts even more pressure on Attorney General Barr. Today's testimony alleging that Barr tried to kneecap the D.C. federal prosecutors to help Donald Trump. And that echoes that other new controversy for Barr, allegations that he tried to kneecap the New York federal prosecutors to help Trump. Are we following the storyline here? It is pretty consistent. When this many insiders and experts and witnesses who saw it with their own experience in the office, when they're all alleging the same thing in pattern in literally different geographical offices together, what's important, why this is our lead story tonight, why I want you to know about this together, it starts to look like corroboration. That's before you even add in John Bolton alleging that Trump's approach to DOJ was, in his view, criminal obstruction of justice. So let's get into what Congress heard today. A key Mueller prosecutor who led the successful charges against Trump advisor Roger Stone, giving his eyewitness account of two bad things. One, the improper motive, helping a friend of the president. And two, the improper act, interceding to soften that particular case. So here's that prosecutor, Aaron Zelinsky, a pretty somber, careful line prosecutor, doesn't do interviews, doesn't go on television, and he's walking through the facts as he knows them. What this testimony might lack in some sort of DC rhetorical drama, I think it makes up for in a chilling warning that America's justice system is now compromised by Bill Barr, that it is in danger. A chilling claim that there was fear in the office. There were warnings to do this stuff for Trump or get fired.
I was told that the acting U.S. attorney was giving Stone a break because he was afraid of the President of the United States. We were told that we could be fired if we didn't go along. I was repeatedly told the department's actions were not based on the law or the facts, but rather on political considerations, Mr. Stone's political relationships, and that the acting U.S. attorney was afraid of the President.
Afraid of President Trump. And Zelensky's not alone today. Another prosecutor who served during this administration alleging the same improper motives were driving interference in other types of cases regarding the auto industry, and that Barr's personal distaste for cannabis companies, which operate legally in many states, led to pressure for investigations that might not have been valid. Now, this other prosecutor telling Congress he was so concerned he actually requested that the DOJ watchdog render an independent judgment on whether Barr was abusing his power that way.
Earlier this year, I asked the DOJ Inspector General to examine whether multiple antitrust investigations launched under Attorney General Barr were abuses of authority or other misconduct.
Note the Trump administration has also ousted several of those same inspector generals in agencies who check on this kind of stuff, who investigate it. Now, what was the Republican response to these very serious claims? I mean, one response, as always, would be, this isn't true, or you've misunderstood it. Obviously, if true, it would be bad. And to be very clear and fair, at times there were some legal arguments offered. For example, Republicans debated and contested the independence of Mueller's team. And whether the team is independent or not is a valid, factual point of inquiry. But that's not all that happened. I have to show you this as well. Other times, the Republican pushback devolved completely. We had, at one point, a congressman loudly trying to tap to prevent this witness from being heard by his own committee, a witness who actually, by the way, happened to be a former DOJ official in a Republican administration who's now critical of Barr.
But to me, Barr's crowning dishonesty is the portrait of Edward Levy that a
Mr.
recent
Chairman, I would ask that the sergeant at arms be called upon to stop the disruption of this meeting. I can't hear this witness. This is a very important witness.
Yeah, well, he's way beyond.
And the chair has
and if there are no rules about when people can talk, there's no rules about when you can make noise.
There are no rules about when you can make noise. If that is your defense of what you're doing in a serious committee meeting about the independence of our justice system, referring to your own contribution as making noise, you might want to think about your debating skills. In fact, I have to quote my colleague Lawrence O'Donnell, a former congressional staffer himself, he knows those committees well, saying today that the breach of decorum you just saw there was a sort of new petty low for interrupting, and that at least some of those Republicans were acting like, quote, parliamentary vandals. Now, as Congress probes how Barr pressured that D.C. office, there's also news in a case coming out of the same office, Michael Flynn's guilty plea, which Barr has been pushing to drop. The top federal appeals court siding with DOJ to order those Flynn charges dismissed. So legally, that makes that the very likely outcome, unless a special appeal were to go higher. Meanwhile, Roger Stone, facing a deadline for reporting to prison within the week, He wants a delay, Congress deciding what to do about Barr's conduct in these new allegations. Bipartisan legal experts warn if Donald Trump can personally dictate who goes to prison or gets protected, if that's where we are now, out in the open, confirm, evidence, defended, then the rule of law itself is in doubt tonight. Now, from street protests to public pressure on a variety of issues, again, when we report out these stories, when you go and talk to them, talk about them, I should say, to your friends and colleagues, and we think, okay, on all this type of stuff, it does lead back to the question, does it matter? Do witness accounts, blowing the whistle, new evidence, this public pressure, does it change anything? Well, we have an answer on that too right now. For Bill Barr, who was caught in that false claim about ousting one prosecutor Friday night, who's facing this evidentiary battering ram today, who's being warned of congressional subpoenas and budget cuts, the answer is yes, it matters, because under fire now, suddenly, he has agreed and relented, and he will say, he says, he will testify, facing the House Judiciary Committee in July. One way, this already may be catching up to him. I want to bring in two experts who have been with us from the jump, as we say, from the origins of the Mueller probe, from before Roger Stone was charged, who followed this all along the way and helped guide our understanding. John Flannery, former federal prosecutor, as well as a congressional counsel, and Maya Wiley, a former federal prosecutor in a civil division of SDNY and counsel to the New York mayor. Good to have both of you back.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Maya, some of what is more important legally, congressionally, perhaps even politically as an additional layer when it is laid out, tested, and presented in this formal binding process. Walk us through what you think matters about a prosecutor actually putting this on the record under penalty of perjury and all that to say that this is how bad it was under Barr.
What we heard today was essentially the equivalent of a demand to impeach William Barr. William Barr wants to make history. I think he established the strongest case I know of for doing something we have not done before in this country, and that's take out a cabinet member through impeachment. And I am not blowing smoke here. These are career public servants. And let's step back and talk about what that means in the context of the rule of law. What that means is people who go into government instead of the private sector, people who take cuts in pay that, even though they get paid well compared to a lot of Americans, substantially less than they could earn if they went into the private sector to represent big companies. And they do that for a reason. They do that because they believe that it makes a difference to serve the people. That's what public service is. And when you take that oath of office, the oath you are taking is to put aside your own personal interests. Well, Bill Barr took that oath, and what we are hearing from his own staff, from the people who are way down on the totem pole from where he sits at the top of that ivory tower of his. And what they are saying is that he is saying that yes, indeed, Donald Trump is above the law. The GOP has a lot that they have to answer for allowing that from the last impeachment hearing on Donald Trump, but that they now are demonstrating in this hearing that career public servants of all parties calling on them to protect the very sense of what this Constitution is, which is that there is one law, it applies to all of us, and that they not stand up to that would be nothing short of telling Donald Trump, not only did we not impeach you, we actually did mean you abuse all the power you want. Go right ahead. And for all those protesters in the street, you're right too. There is no equal protection of the law. You don't get the protection that Donald Trump or his rich friends get. Welcome to America.
John?
Well, following upon Maya's lead, I would expand it this way. We have a law enforcement officer who is lawless. He's not he's not above the law, he just entirely disregards it, in part because he believes that the president, as he said in his testimony and his writings and so forth, we have a unitary executive, and the president can do what he wants, and if he does it, it is the law. So you have Trump and Barr. And I think what we're talking about is we're not just talking about misconduct or some of the polite phrases, and I'm so glad that Maya talked about impeachment, because there's almost nothing less than that congressional tool. But the next tool is to pass legislation now, which may not become law until the next session, that says we can have an independent counsel to investigate and prosecute public officials, including Barr, including Trump, particularly if he loses the election, for things like obstruction of, or lying to the court.
Let's dig into that, John, because the fact that Barr now admits he will testify, and I have more on that later in the show, does create legal questions. I mean, what he said Friday was false. He said that publicly. Everyone knows politicians and cabinet officials can lie in public. But boy, would he have a bigger problem if he tries the same thing under oath in the perjury setting of facing Congress. Take a listen to this other exchange regarding a lot of these related issues, John, including Zelensky. Take a look.
Sure.
You wrote in your written testimony that it pains you to describe these events. Can you explain why it pains you?
We are immensely proud of what we do. We are proud to serve in the Department of Justice, and we are proud that we prosecute without fear or favor. To describe an abdication of responsibility like this, and this sort of contradiction of all the reasons that we have taken these jobs is deeply painful to me.
So let's go, same question to both of you. First Maya, then John. When you look at what is being laid out here, what do you see as the legal hooks, the pressure on Barr, if there is basically now more than one allegation of misconduct? Maya first.
Well, let's just start with the fact that he will be under oath. If he wants to do what he did in his confirmation hearing and in other hearings and pretend like he doesn't understand what basic words mean, that should be an indication to Congress that they should take it a step further. I suspect he'll be very smart about avoiding those kinds of traps. The trap that we can't avoid as a people is allowing him to be Slick Rick and try to get out of this hearing without being truly accountable. But that also means calling other witnesses and testing everything he says, getting every document, and I fully suspect that this administration will continue to make a fight of public accountability on whether or not they're abusing power and whether or not they are lying under oath.
Well, Maya, you mentioned Slick Rick. Obviously, to quote Slick Rick, the problem would be if Barr is telling children's stories that don't really add up. And as you know, John, because I'm sure you're also a big Slick Rick fan.
Absolutely.
The issue is the stories you tell can catch up with you. They can put you in danger when they're false in the wrong situation. All tongue-in-cheek aside, Maya is making the important point that Barr knows that better than anyone. It's almost like a tell. I mean, I'm going to get into this with a member of the committee, but the more that he is, shall we say, faux confused about what words like ask and direct mean, the more you're getting to the heart of the matter of whether this individual, who does not have the deference or immunity that a sitting president does under at least the traditional DOJ memos, this individual is up for. John.
Yes, well, you know, the thing about a person who lies and lies under oath is to find the inconsistent statements they made before. So, for example, you said on Friday night, he is saying, oh, he's decided to leave the office, and not that he was being fired. So that's a statement that was public and is known, but there are two parts to that. Not only is it an inconsistency he'll have to defend when he appears before the judiciary committee, should that happen, and you and I may be more likely to be Irish honorary than that happens in his past performance. But if he does appear and he's sworn under oath, the thing that's interesting to me is that false statement was part of a movement to remove a U.S. attorney who has a series of important investigations. He didn't do that alone, and whether or not he conspired with Barr, with Trump, which appears to be the case. That's a very special problem. And the same is true of the other cases, because his testimony before the House Judiciary Committee is going to involve all these things. It's going to involve the firings. It's going to involve the substitution of personnel. It's going to involve the Stone case. It's going to involve the Flynn case. It's going to involve what associations or promises or statements were made to judges even on the bench. There are all sorts of things that suggest exactly the crimes that I outlined before: obstruction and perhaps perjury and misleading the courts and filing to the court of which they were directed by Barr. So there's a whole host of things that mean Barr should not just be disbarred but he should be charged and ultimately confined for his misconduct. It happened for Mitchell. It happened for other members of the Justice Department in the past. This guy is a prime candidate for exactly that kind of treatment.
Well, and it's certainly a disturbing scenario. As you say, there is precedent for it. Watergate ending with an attorney general going to jail. I'm, as a journalist, not able to render, given the public evidence, whether that does or does not apply to Barr. But both of you making the point that the evidence requires more investigation for starters. John Flannery Wiley, always indebted to you, given all the expertise you have covering this with us from 2017. We're going to fit in a break, but coming up, I will be joined by the actual lawmaker who will be questioning Barr if he shows up at that hearing. Also, COVID infections are surging to some of the worst we've seen in months. Some states now delaying, canceling, changing these reopenings. Is this story that obviously affects your life? We have a veteran doctor from the Obama administration about what really needs to happen. Also, there are new indictments against the 3 men accused in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery, a story we've been staying on. And that's not all. I want to tell you, we're doing something very special later tonight. My conversation with different people around the country who are directly affected by COVID and the recession. We're going to get into it. A special dialogue different than what we usually have day to day on the news. So I hope you'll stick around for it later on this special edition of The Beat with Ari Melvin.
If you buy a 2020 Volkswagen today, you'll get 2 years or 20,000 miles of scheduled carefree maintenance. 3 years or 36,000 miles of 24/7 roadside assistance. 4 years or 50,000 miles bumper-to-bumper limited warranty. 5 years of connected services. And for 6 years, you won't have paid any interest. Down the road, you'll be grateful you bought a Volkswagen today.
Now, more than ever, you need technology you can rely on.
I'm a Dell Technologies advisor.
Ich auch. And if you're a small business, we're with you.
We are with you.
Estamos com você.
We want to help.
So we'll be right here at home, answering your calls, providing support,
And standing by you every step of the way.
I am Robert Strickler. I've been involved in communications and the media for 45 years. I've been taking Prevagen on a regular basis for at least 8 years. For me, the greatest benefit over the years has been that Prevagen seems to help me recall things and also think more clearly, and I enthusiastically recommend Prevagen. It has helped me an awful lot.
Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
I thought I had my moderate to severe ulcerative colitis under control. Turns out, it was controlling me. Seemed like my symptoms were taking over our time together.
Think you'll make it?
So I talked to my doctor and learned Humira can help get and keep UC under control when other medications haven't worked well enough. And it helps people achieve control that lasts, so you can experience few or no symptoms.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections. Serious and sometimes fatal infections, including tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Be there for you and them. Ask your doctor about Humira. With Humira, control is possible.
If you can't afford your medicine, AbbVie may be able to help.
Prescription eyewear can be really expensive. But here's the secret. Glasses don't actually cost that much to make. Surprise! Especially when you design your own eyewear and then sell it directly to your customers. Like we do. Oh, hi. We're Warby Parker. Our glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses. And the best part? You can try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
Use Ibotta every time you shop. You'll earn real cash back on every purchase at over 500,000 stores. Simply pick your offers and go shopping. Then take a picture of your receipt. Download now and get your $20 bonus just for trying the app.
This is a crate from KiwiCo. Each crate has an awesome science, art, or engineering project inside. Parents can order online and it ships right to your door. Learning has never been so fun or convenient. Get 30% off. Visit trykiwico.com.
Welcome back. I'm joined now by Congressman Ted Lieu of California, who sits on the Judiciary Committee and was at that big hearing today, as well as a member of the committee that will obviously be questioning Attorney General Barr next month. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, Ari.
We'll get to Barr, but let's start with, given that you're on the committee, for folks who didn't watch all of it, we've shown some of the substantive excerpts. What do you think was important that Congress learned that was put on the record today?
Thank you, Ari, for your question. Let me first say that as a former prosecutor, it's always been clear to me that the only reason we can deprive someone of their freedom and lock them up in prison is based on the consent of their people. And that consent is based on our shared understanding that no one is above the law and that prosecutions are fair and based on the evidence. One of the greatest dangers to democracy is that people start believing that prosecutions are based on politics or based on who the defendant happens to know. And unfortunately, Bill Barr has perverted the Department of Justice, where friends of Donald Trump get special favors no one else could. And what the evidence today showed at the hearing is that Roger Stone got special favors, according to prosecutor Aaron Leslinsky, that no American ever could. He got a reduced sentencing recommendation because Donald Trump went nuts on Twitter after the first sentencing recommendation was made public by the Department of Justice.
Congressman, is that a legal term? He went nuts on Twitter?
That is a legal term, and we've seen it unfortunately happen quite a bit with this president.
Let me play, because you bring up Stone and what he was in trouble for. There were things he was convicted of, so a jury of his peers found them to be criminal. And there were other things that directly contradict claims that he and the White House, and at the time the Trump campaign, had made about what Mueller was investigating, which is how much foreign coordination was there. And even if it didn't rise to the level of a crime, Congress obviously has an interest in protecting against the foreign interference in our free democracy. Take a look at this exchange from today.
There are dozens of calls between Stone and the Trump campaign's top officials, right?
That's correct.
Witnesses also testified that they were present when Stone spoke to then-candidate Trump, right?
Mr. Gates testified to that at trial, Mr. Cohen testified to that for Congress, and Mr. Manafort told that to the special counsel's office.
I always try to be clear and fair, and so I'm emphasizing that Bob Mueller did not charge crimes related to that foreign interaction, in fairness. Stone is a convict for other reasons. But from a policy and democracy view, did you think that exchange and that part of this inquiry is important to your committee, and if so, why?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up that exchange. This is why we even had this hearing. It's because in 2016, the Russians engaged in a sweeping and systematic attack on our elections. Roger Stone coordinated with WikiLeaks, who took the stolen emails that the Russian hackers had from the Hillary Clinton campaign, and then he coordinated with members of the Trump campaign and spoke to Donald Trump himself. And then the Trump campaign used these stolen emails, they based their campaign messaging on it, and Roger Stone was then convicted of multiple crimes, and Bill Barr steps in and lowers the sentence. That is a perversion of justice.
Congressman Lieu, with an inside seat, we appreciate you breaking it down, and obviously we'll be coming back to you and your colleagues as Mr. Barr does finally have that day of reckoning in your committee, something I've been emphasizing in our reporting. It would appear that some of the pressure was working. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Ari.
Yes, sir. Meanwhile, on this virus that is surging, Donald Trump downplaying it, getting fact-checked by Dr. Fauci himself. We're going to show you exactly what you need to know. We're back in just 30 seconds.
Our digital solutions make banking easier. Deposit checks, check balances, pay bills, and more. Explore all you can do with our digital tools from almost anywhere. PNC Bank.
Where will you go first? Wherever you may go, Lexus will welcome you back with exceptional offers on.
Get 0% financing and make no payments for up to 90 days on all 2020 Lexus models.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Donald Trump continuing to try to downplay the coronavirus, but yeah. In just the last 2 weeks. Look at this chart. You will see here these steep climbs in several states of different geographic styles. You got Texas, you got Florida, Arizona, California, which was hit hard early, but look at how bad it's getting right now. These are states you're looking at with the 7-day moving average surging. These are states that have largely tried phased reopenings. Then you can count hospitalizations. I need you to see this. You need to know this for your family and your choices. Texas, where Houston's ICUs are approaching 100%. They're basically 97% full. Arizona, North Carolina, Arkansas, record highs in hospitalization, which is another way to measure this, totally apart from testing debates. And then, more than 35,000 cases recorded here in a single day. You see the red arrow on April. We want to show you at that period of time it surged up and everyone thought, gosh, this is the time to shut down, right? Now look where we are on the far right of your screen. Keep this in mind if you hear people say they're tired of this, it's time to move on, we've done enough. We are back to the April peaks. The 7-day moving average is not our friend. We are facing the worst day since April. If you count it up, it's up 40% in just these last 2 weeks. 27 states seeing increased cases. And today, in New York, the governor issuing restrictions to visitors who are coming from those places.
So we're announcing today a joint travel advisory. People coming in from states that have a high infection rate must quarantine for 14 days.
Today, Dr. Fauci, who's been breaking with Trump on the severity of spikes, says some states open too soon.
So we're talking about states like Arizona, Texas, Florida are particularly hard hit right now. So is any of this, is the spike linked to the fact that these are some of the states that opened up early?
You know, you can't specifically pinpoint it and say, yes, this is the case, but it's highly suspicious.
I'm joined now by Dr. Kavita Patel, a former Obama health policy advisor, also an MSNBC medical contributor. Good to see you.
Thanks, Ari. Good to see you.
Here we are. Walk us through what these charts mean, because it would be easy for people day to day to say, well, we went through that bad period. Obviously, there are problems, but there's a feeling in some places like it's time to move on, and we're actually going back to the worst days.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think it's, like all things, that's complicated, and that it's not just the one thing. It's not that states only reopened too soon, Ari. It's also the fact that most of these states also did not put any mask requirements into place in public settings, combined with the fact that you do have hospitals that were ready for coronavirus cases, did not get that many cases early on, and have already resumed elective procedures that they delayed or canceled. And that's all leading to kind of this increased hospitalization or capacity issue. To be candid, what we need to do to kind of move forward is actually take a step back. So take Texas, for example. They need to kind of take a step back. You've already heard the governor making comments about staying at home, but they need to implement mask policies. This isn't a political issue. It doesn't need to be. And then they need to take a step back and kind of decreasing store capacity. We do not need to turn the dial back to zero and all hide in our basements, but we do need to kind of go back. And then we also, as the hospitals and leaders around healthcare, we're probably going to have to look at suspending a proportion of those procedures that are also leading to beds. And all right, the final point, but we can go into more. Younger adults are accounting for up to half of the hospitalizations. So a story that's being spun, even by the Trump administration, is that, no, these are young, healthy people, it's no big deal. It's a big deal, and people should respect that and not be trivial no matter what age you are.
Appreciate all that, Doctor. we showed some of the facts here so people really understand it, and separating that from the understandable fatigue in many places. I want to show you two more items for you to walk our audience through. Number one, just the hospitalization rate in these states, as mentioned. This doesn't even get you into that testing debate. We just look at how many states have rising hospitalization there in the Sun Belt and down south. Numbers are even worse when you count the other metrics. And then look at USA versus Europe. You have that week-by-week rolling average. And you see in April, and this really connects, Doctor, with what we showed earlier, that in April, everybody was surging in that problem. The EU, which is a lot of different places, different geographies, seems to show a model, even in a democracy, for how to bring it down going into May and June. And there we are. What is the import and the difference, in your view, between these two lines?
Yep, it's very clear to me. I mean, it starts at the top. We really have not had any of the leadership that we need from the top, despite having, pretty amazing kind of scientists and civil servants. You're seeing Dr. Fauci and other public health leaders making kind of guidance to putting that out to Americans. But that delta you showed in the graphs really is kind of a representation of the piecework, where we had states that decided to reopen but said we don't want to put a mask policy in place. You also had states, you saw very creative solutions to workforce shortages and hospitals. You saw lots of different things to try to flatten the curve, and now we're just seeing those increases. And unfortunately, just something that gets lost on a lot of people, that we still have not put in enough of what we call contact tracing into place. So a lot of what we see in the EU is they know why people are getting sick. And in many cases, we have some clues, but we still don't exactly know where people are getting the infection from.
And, I struggle with math. We're over on time, but what exactly is Delta?
The difference. The difference between the two.
The gap between the two.
The gap between the two. Why is so big? And those are the reasons. So to unpack some of that.
Right, to really understand why they can do it, why can't we? And if that's motivating in any way, right? I don't know how people are thinking about it, but hey, other places are saving more lives. Do we want to save more lives? We are in this together for the long haul. Dr. Patel, you always teach us so much. Appreciate your clarity tonight. Still to come, Donald Trump distortion on the virus with a special look at what's happening out there. How are you feeling? How are you dealing with this? How do you struggle, as some of our guests have told us they're going to talk about, with getting COVID and losing your job? Or how do you run a business? We have all of that in a very, very special conversation that's coming up only right here on The Beat. Also tonight, I'm going to give you the update on this developing news in Georgia, where 3 suspects indicted in the Arbery case.
When it comes to longevity, who has the highest percentage of its vehicles still on the road today? Subaru. When it comes to best overall value, who does IntelliChoice rank number 1? Subaru. And when it comes to safety, who has more 2020 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus winning vehicles? More than Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai. Combined, Subaru. It's easy to love a car you can trust. It's easy to love a Subaru. Get 0% APR financing for 63 months on select Subaru models, now through June 30th.
My home is my sanctuary. It's where I can just... In your home, Rocket Mortgage helps you feel comfortable financing one with a personalized experience centered around you. Rocket Mortgage. Push button, get mortgage. Thank you.
Welcome. Do these moves look familiar? Then you might have a condition called dry mouth. Biotene is clinically proven to soothe and moisturize a dry mouth, plus it freshens breath. Biotene, immediate and long-lasting dry mouth symptom relief.
It's Velveeta shells and cheese versus the other guys. Clearly, Velveeta melts creamier.
What stands behind the yard sign of an ADT home? It's your world, safer and more secure against the unknown and unimaginable. With tested, trusted, 24/7 protection and a system we help you customize with video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, locks and lights, carbon monoxide detection, and fire and smoke alarms. Now, get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring starting at just $28.99 a month. About $1 a day from ADT. Call 1-800-ADT-ASAP
Meet Gravity, the original weighted blanket for sleep, stress, and anxiety. Gravity is the only weighted blanket demonstrated to improve sleep and reduce stress. Now available in cooling for summer.
We are KiwiCo, and we deliver hands-on STEM projects designed to inspire young innovators. Kids of all ages can explore science, engineering, art, and more. Get 30% off. Visit trykiwico.com. Must be 18 or older to log on.
This is a tale of two kitties. This kitty uses ordinary litter. This kitty uses pretty litter, the world's smartest cat litter, and it's delivered right to your door. Its ultra-light, super absorbent formula traps odors, and it does something no ordinary clay litter can do. Pretty Litter's color-changing crystals make it easy to monitor your cat's health, helping to avoid serious illness. She's switching to Pretty Litter. Smart move. Try Pretty Litter risk-free for 30 days. When you sign up, get free delivery. Go to prettylitter.com.
Turning to an update on the policing and justice issues that have, of course, gripped the nation. In Georgia, lawmakers passing a hate crimes legislation with bipartisan support. It was just one of 4 states that didn't have such a law. The bill passed after the Ahmaud Arbery case, the black man who was killed by 3 white men while he was jogging unarmed in February. Today, those men indicted by a grand jury with 4 counts of felony murder and 5 other counts. Turning to Louisville, a detective involved in the killing of Breonna Taylor, a very important case, has now been fired. This is 3 months after that incident. Brett Hackison entered Taylor's apartment on this controversial no-knock warrant and then fired 10 rounds. She was not even a suspect. All of this happening as Senate Democrats are blocking a Republican police bill today, saying it just does not address these problems in a substantial way. The Democrats pushing a vote on a separate bill in the House tomorrow. They say it goes much farther. We've been showing some of that. While progress may be uncertain for those who want criminal justice reform, a new poll shows 54% of African Americans do think some sort of police reform will actually likely happen. We are seeing more and more calls to get this done and people believing it's necessary. Now, when we come back, if you've been watching this hour, you heard me mention this at the top of the program, a very special conversation we're convening with real people, Americans around the country, addressing coronavirus as it spikes. We talk to the directly impacted and we try to get into this with what you're feeling, what you're going through, that special conversation right after this break.
Where will you go first? Wherever you may go, Lexus will welcome you back with exceptional offers.
Get 0% financing and make no payments for up to 90 days on all 2020 Lexus models.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
When you think of a bank, you think of people in a place. But when you have the Chase mobile app, your bank can be virtually any place. So when you get a check, you can deposit it from here. And you can see your transactions and check your balance from here. You can detect suspicious activity on your account from here. And you can pay your friends back from here. So when someone asks you, where's your bank? You can tell them, here's my bank. Or, here's my bank. Or, here's my bank. Because if you download and use the Chase mobile app, your bank is virtually any place. So visit chase.com/mobile.
Has asthma pushed you into a smaller life? Are your asthma treatments just not enough? Then see what could open up for you with Fasenra. It is not a steroid or inhaler. It is not a rescue medicine or for other eosinophilic conditions. It's an add-on injection for people 12 and up with asthma driven by eosinophils. Nearly 7 out of 10 adults with asthma may have elevated eosinophils. Fasenra is designed to target and remove eosinophils, a key cause of asthma. It helps to prevent asthma attacks, improve breathing, and can reduce the need for oral steroids like prednisone. Fasenra may cause allergic reactions. Get help right away if you have swelling of your face, mouth, and tongue, or trouble breathing. Don't stop your asthma treatments unless your doctor tells you to. Tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection or your asthma worsens. Headache and sore throat may occur. Could you be living a bigger life? Ask an asthma specialist about Fasenra.
Let's be honest, quitting smoking is hard. Like quitting every Monday hard. Quitting feels so big. So try making it smaller, and you'll be surprised at how easily starting small can lead to something big. Start stopping with Nicorette.
My gums are irritated. I don't have to worry about that.
You're right.
Harmful bacteria lurk just below the gum line.
Crest Gum Detoxify, voted Product of the Year. It works below the gum line to neutralize harmful plaque bacteria and help reverse early gum damage. Gum Detoxify from Crest.
Excuse me, ladies.
You're Martin Sheen.
I am.
Who's Martin Sheen?
The guy who's going to help save your family hundreds of dollars on prescriptions with Single Care. Gotta go.
Silver Fox. On what?
Oh my, beat the price again. Excuse me, sir. Single Care, this gentleman, please.
Ever since he learned about Single Care, he's been like Robin Hooding it.
Excuse me, folks. Just want to help you save some money.
You can't be back here, Martin.
Sorry. Take just 10 seconds to lower the cost of your prescriptions. Check the Single Care price today.
At Philadelphia, we know what makes the perfect smear of cream cheese. You need only the freshest milk and cream. That one. And the world's best, and possibly only, Chamelier. Philadelphia. Schmear perfection.
Where will you go first? Wherever you may go, Lexus will welcome you back with exceptional offers on exceptional vehicles.
Get 0% financing and make no payments for up to 90 days on all 2020 Lexus models.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
This is cellulose acetate, plant-based material that's not only extremely durable, but also quite flexible, making it ideal for Warby Parker glasses, which, by the way, start at $95, including prescription lenses. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com. Oh yeah, about those prescription lenses. Warby Parker glasses come standard with custom-cut polycarbonate lenses that have been treated with scratch-resistant and anti-reflective coatings. Nice. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
Introducing Total, an entire gym and personal trainer that fits beautifully into your home. Total combines expert coaching with 200 pounds of digital weight. Whether you're looking to build strength or get lean, there's a coach and program to help you get there. And just like a personal trainer, Total dynamically adjusts the weight for each exercise. But the most amazing thing isn't what it can do, but what it knows you can do. Learn more at Total.com.
Welcome back to The Beat. We hear from experts and politicos all the time, but right now we turn to people who are living through all of this around the nation. Workers and small business owners adapting to the new normal. And we want to go directly to the ground, to both some of the hardest hit places, like people in New York that you see in front of you, as well as regions that opened early on, like Georgia and Florida. So to do something a little different, I am joined right now by Annette Nielsen from New York, Tom Bosco from New York, Lee Dupuy from Georgia, and Melissa Hilaire in Florida. Thanks to everyone for joining this conversation.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
We have been talking and reporting with people around the country. Annette, you have been in the heart of this in New York. So beginning with you, how did coronavirus hit your family? What are you going through?
Well, it started back in March. My husband, who's a family doctor, was seeing patients, certainly who were infected. I was working, managing a cooking school that existed inside a huge market. So I was in contact with a lot of people too, and we both came down with it around the same time. My position was basically eliminated where I work. Yes, I'm concerned about my next job and where it's going to be, but I believe that, something will come up, and I'm lucky that my husband is still gainfully employed.
Tom, you're also in New York, speaking to us from a restaurant that you're still running. How's it going?
Yep. Oh, it's tough. We're running at a fraction of what we were doing before. Our sales are down 75%. But we made a decision early on to stay open. It's giving us the opportunity to forge a deeper relationship with our community.
And what do you do to keep your customers safe?
Oh, First of all, it's a very interesting question, because what we did 2 months ago is not what we're doing today, and it's so funny. Things change constantly. We're wearing gloves. We're wearing masks. We wipe everything down. I could tell you the first week, though, I couldn't find hand sanitizer, and this was like, they were in New York, and we couldn't find toilet paper.
Let me bring Lee in and then come back to you, Tom. Lee, you're in your barbershop in Georgia. You're shaking your head. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems we have is finding hand sanitizer, Lysol, just cleaning supplies. And then you got the mask, and people are going up on the prices of everything, like the mask. You go to the store and They were once 50 cents, now they're $5.
What portion of your business would you say has dropped since this outbreak?
Before we would do, each barber could do 4 haircuts an hour, and now best we can do is 2.
It's really changed what seems like a very traditional thing. We know what goes into a haircut. It's completely changed the way you do it. Tom, what's the portion of business you've lost even with the way you were operating?
And the portion we lost were the sit down. 75% of the business was lost through sit down.
Majority of your revenue gone. We hear a lot about what the federal government and state governments are trying to do. Some of it hasn't worked. Some of it's getting out there. Have you gotten any funding support?
Yeah, and it was hard. I'll be honest with you. When this thing first started, it was devastating. I was resentful. I was frustrated, dejected, and look, I didn't think it was going to happen, and I didn't think, even when I was applying at the small tiny bank in upstate New York, I did it thinking this isn't going to happen.
And then what was the result?
A week later, I was picking up a check for a significant amount of money.
We're hearing from 2 business owners here, and I want to turn to Melissa. You're in Florida. How is all this affecting you?
My name is Melissa, and I'm a home care worker. I was working with a 95-year-old lady in Miami, Florida. And since the pandemic happened in the beginning, the daughter of the old lady told me that you're not coming to work anymore, and I don't want you to bring the virus in her home. I'm a single mother with a 6-year-old boy, and we are home and we are safe. Thank you, God. Yes, I want to go back to work, but how? Where I'm gonna leave him? Because everyone, you cannot leave your son, and there was no daycare, there was no place you can leave your son. You have to take care of your own family now.
And Nat, what do you think about all that?
I look at this situation now with an older kid, what's their life going to be like? Are they going to be able to find work and have a life of their own?
I want to turn to also something that is in the news a lot, which is how is the leadership at the state and federal level doing? Tom, how do you think the president is doing?
I think he's doing a good job, as good as he can. I think there's definitely been some mistakes made, and looking in hindsight, there's definitely some things that could have been done differently. But at the end of the day, I support him, and I support my governor, and I support my mayor.
You're speaking both about Governor Cuomo, who's a Democrat, you're speaking about President Trump, who's a Republican. Did you vote for Trump last time?
I did. I voted for Trump last time.
At this virus response and what is now a recession, for all the factors we've discussed, does Trump have your vote next time?
Well, yes. Yes, he does.
And when you see the concern raised by doctors and experts that even after more information was available, the president would say things that were medically grounded and weren't always scientifically.
Yeah, that was frustrating. Yeah, that was frustrating. I can see through it. The people that support our president, I think we hear things differently.
Lee, you were shaking your head along.
Well, he does go off the cuff sometimes. I think he's doing a good job with the information that he has. Our governor...
I'll ask you the same question from Tom. Did you vote for him last time?
I did.
And when you look at the virus and the economy, all things considered, does he have your vote next time?
Right now, yes.
And what could change that, or nothing?
Well, if this thing comes back in November, and the economy does this, and I was expecting some help from the government because they said they were going to help. Nobody helped. It kind of makes you lose a little bit of faith. If the economy shuts down again, and this thing comes back and it's raging like the media is saying that it's going to do, and we go 3 or 4 months without having a business, well, that's 3 or 4 months. Next thing you know, we don't have a home. It's hard to be positive about anyone if your home, your livelihood, and everything else is taken away from you.
Melissa, what do you think about all the above?
this experience is a big one for every one of us, even the President of the United States. And it's an experience that will pull every one of you to know to act. To act better and to have a better system when something like that happen, and to know exactly what you're gonna do.
Before we go, what I want to try to do with you all is a quicker lightning round. What was the worst thing, worst news, worst day that you had during all this so far, Annette?
Canceling on going to visit my parents who are elderly.
Lee?
My mother's in a nursing home. I haven't been able to see her in a month and a half, 2 months now.
Melissa?
Stay home. I don't like that.
Tom?
Sorry, the day that the PPP, first round of PPP loans dried up, and we couldn't get anybody on the phone, and they didn't know if it was coming back.
What's given you the best cause for hope, Annette?
The humanity that I see in New York with people helping others.
For me, it's been a reset. To reset, get on my knees and pray, and have hope, not only in my fellow man, but Christ.
Melissa?
I hope that things will be better, but we keep faith and we pray for that.
People want a sense of normalcy. Getting your hair cut is a sense of normalcy. Going out and getting some food is a sense of normalcy. Now we need to combine that with safety, with what we're learning and with the support we're getting. I think as a country and as a community and then as a business that we'll be better prepared to be able to live with this disease.
Yeah. All really important thoughts, and it's great to hear from each of you in your different places in the country and your different experiences, so thank you. Stay safe out there. I want to thank Melissa.
Thanks, Ari. Thanks.
So interesting to hear all those views from the ground. That conversation was, of course, previously recorded on Zoom. Again, thanks to everyone for sharing the stories and that civil dialogue. We also have some breaking news on the pandemic coming in when we return.
When you shop with Wayfair, you spend less and get way more. So you can bring your vision to life and save in more ways than one. For small prices, you can build big dreams. Spend less, get way more. Shop everything home at Wayfair today. Find things you need and love and use every day on Etsy. Shop Etsy for everyday finds.
Now, more than ever, you need technology you can rely on.
I'm a Dell Technologies advisor.
Ich auch. And if you're a small business, we're with you. We are with you.
Estamos com você.
We want to help.
So we'll be right here at home, answering your calls, providing support,
And standing by you every step of the way.
At Carvana, no matter what car you buy from us, you get the freedom of a 7-day return policy. This isn't some dealership test drive around the block. It's better. This is 7 days to put your Carvana car to the test and see if it fits your life. Load it up with a week's worth of groceries. Take the kiddos out for ice cream. Check that it has enough wiggle room in your garage. You get the time to make sure you love it. And on the 6th day, we'll reach out and make sure everything's amazing. If so, excellent. If not, swap it out for another or return it for a refund. It's that simple. Because at Carvana, your car happiness is what makes us happy.
This is Keratin Debris, where nail
fungus thrives. Nonex Fungal Nail Clarifying Gel clears out keratin debris. 90% of nails significantly improve after using Nonex. Pick up Nonex today at Walmart, Walgreens, and Rite Aid.
There are so many toothpastes out there. Which one should I use? Try Crest Proactive Defense. It neutralizes bacteria for a healthier mouth than even the leading multi-benefit toothpaste.
They get that no two people are alike. And customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. Almost done? What do you think?
Don't see it. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
We hope you find these digital solutions helpful to bank from almost anywhere. Deposit a check with your phone or tablet. Check balances, pay bills, and more. Send money to people you know and trust with Zelle. Explore all you can do with our digital tools from almost anywhere. PNC Bank.
Fine. No one leaves the table till you're finished.
Fine. We'll sleep here.
TV, movies, sports, breaking news, docs, tunes. More?
Yes, you want more.
Tons. It's Chrisley, Pawnee, Monkey, E.T. Oh, and it's free. Free.
Boom. Mic drop.
That's Peacock. It's free, and that's why you can't not watch.
We've been covering the surging coronavirus cases in the U.S., and now, since we came on the air, this breaking news. The case load in America has now tonight hit its highest daily total ever. A count of 36,358 cases, a record since this pandemic began. The number will continue to climb, as this is a threshold that was met in under 24 hours. Hospitalizations surging around the country, including Texas, Arizona, Arkansas, North Carolina. Officials saying hospitals in Houston are at 97% capacity. U.S. cases up 40% just over these last 2 weeks. You have to see what's happening out there and understand what we're facing. The president has tried to downplay it, but these are the actual facts. Meanwhile, we can listen to the experts as well. A doctor on the front lines of Alabama saying this.
This is not going to go away quickly, and I know people are exhausted and have kind of gotten tired of hearing news about this, but this is what we get to deal with here for the next weeks to months. When I talk with my family, I don't expect things to fundamentally change well into next year, would be my best guess.
We are back to where we started in April when everyone said that was the worst period. Something to keep in mind. That does it for our show tonight. As always, thanks for watching. I'll be back at 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, and keep it right here, right now on Msnbc.
Good evening. I'm Joy Reid. 14 points. That's how far Donald Trump has fallen behind Joe Biden in the race for president, according to a stunning new poll out just today. That poll, conducted by the New York Times, shows that 50% of registered voters say they would vote for Biden, while only 36% support Trump. It's the latest in a series of polls that spell trouble for this president. The Real Clear Politics polling average now has Trump trailing Biden by 10 points. And what is Trump doing about that very significant problem for his reelect? Well, he's wallowing, just bathing in the same pit of racism, xenophobia, and racial grievance that defined his 2020 campaign, except now he's doing it in an even more frantic way. As the New York Times puts it, Trump is pushing anew to divide Americans by race. And yet, per the Times, Trump has rarely been so inflammatory on race in such a narrow window of time. Despite the outcry over police brutality, Trump has equated Black Lives Matter protesters with anarchists and terrorists, openly calling them thugs. He's used incendiary language to refer to the coronavirus, and he speaks of preserving America's heritage using that racially loaded term to defend Confederate monuments.
On top of that, Trump is stoking racial resentment by retweeting videos of African Americans attacking white people. And he made the baseless accusation that Barack Obama, the country's first black president, committed treason. Joining me tonight is Aisha Rasco, NPR White House reporter, Anthony Scaramucci, former communications director in the Trump White House, and Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to start with you, Aisha. The New York Times piece on Donald Trump and his plot to divide Americans by race as a campaign strategy. This is what the New York Times writes, answering to his own instincts and what he thinks, quote, my people want, as he often puts it to advisors. The president is exploiting racial divisions in a way that appeals to only a segment of his party. Per your reporting, does Donald Trump understand my people to mean, quite frankly, white people?
I mean, I think that when you hear the president talking, I don't want to try to get into his head, but he has said just a few weeks ago that MAGA loves the black people. MAGA loves African Americans, seeming to say that MAGA does not include African Americans. And so he's used that sort of language in the past. Now, it is clear the president does have this outreach that he does to call, Black Voices for Trump and black surrogates that he does use to talk about his record and things of that nature. But as you said, there has been a lot of very mixed messages coming from him, particularly with those clips that he's tweeting, like just with random black people attacking a white person without context or anything like that. It's not, the message that he is sending is one that is rooted in division.
Let me go to you, Anthony, because you're absolutely right. Aisha, from a reporting point of view, they're not going to blatantly say that. But Donald Trump, has said he should have a whites versus blacks apprentice. He said the MAGAs love the black people, which implies that the MAGAs aren't in the black people. We know there are a few blacks for Trump people. There are Diamond and Silk and such that do show up at his rallies to entertain his base. But when he's saying things like that, is that a very barely coded way of saying his people are white Americans, and he thinks in his mind that overt racist appeals are what they want?
Well, he's experimenting. The Kung Flu statement, that racist statement yesterday was part of that experimentation. He is searching for what he thinks is the Rubik's Cube answer to getting him reelected, and that is more white turnout in November. And so he's decided that he's going to make this a race-baiting race war. He's going to do everything he can to divide the people, Joy, and he's hoping that he can get his base to turn out in terms of voter participation at a higher percentage than last time. And so right now he's experimenting. It's June. By August, he'll have a much more refined, much more negative, much more racist pitch.
And just, the problem with that, Maria Teresa, is that, number one, the polls show that the majority of white voters don't want that they're not interested in it, that they agree more and more and more with people of color about things like leasing and about Black Lives Matter even. And so he's pitching to not even a majority of white Americans at this point. But he what he's doing does have a precedent. I want to play a really great montage that was put together by the wonderful team here. And it is the thing that's the most like Donald Trump in a lot of ways, and that would be one George Wallace. Take a listen.
Law and order must be further restored nationwide.
The overwhelming majority of the people of both races are sick and tired of the breakdown of law enforcement.
These are anarchists. These are not protesters. You listen to the fake news, they say, oh, the protesters were lovely.
You anarchists had better have your day now, because I tell you again, you're through after November 5th in this country.
Our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa.
They are mobs employing the street warfare tactics of the communists.
If the Democrats gain power, then the rioters will be in charge.
The American people are tired of some of the treasonable conduct allowed in the name of academic freedom that's giving a morale boost to the enemies of our country.
Americans want law and order. They demand law and order.
When has it come to have racial overtones in this country to stand for law and order?
I mean, I know you were not even alive, but all this was happening, Maria Teresa Kumar, but you were a great student of history. I mean, this kind of...
I think this is... Yep.
Go on.
made, talked about that, saying that immigrants were the problem. And he dusted off the Make America Great of the 1950s, the 1930s, the 1940s rhetoric, and nothing really has changed, sadly, in his current pitch. Most presidents, when they're going to go for re-election, they try to create policy positions and tell the American people how they're going to improve their lives. He has that opportunity, given that we are teetering on economic overseeing the 1960 level civil unrest. He has so many opportunities to do the right thing, and he just does not know how to. I think part of the challenge with Trump, though, is that what he doesn't recognize is that you can't get into the White House by such a marginal base, because you have so many individuals that have come back to the Democratic Party during the midterms, and I'm speaking specifically to suburban white women who, one, wanted their health care, they wanted to safeguard it, but they also were so abhorrent of what was happening with children at the border and the separation of children. Currently, Joy, under COVID, the president is separating families once again. He's asking parents to sign away their parental rights if they want to get their kids out of detention. The stories goes on, and it's one thing to demonstrate what his rhetoric is, Joy, but we just have to look at his anti-immigrant, anti-people of color policies to know where he really stands. The policing task force that President Obama put together to talk about police brutality, to talk about changing the culture, the need to make sure that we are resetting because we knew that there was a problem. One of the first things he did when he took office was zero that program out. He left all these police departments and communities holding the bag of empty promises. He did the exact same thing when you talk about immigration reform. He had a huge defeat with DACA last week. So what did he do on Monday? He's trying to rescind immigration visas once again. So this is what he knows, and the 2020 election is going to be based on two things. One, the worldview of Donald Trump of us versus them, versus Biden having to come back to this idea of coalition building, that we are stronger together, that we are Americans of all shades and all religious preferences, and that is what makes us strong. And that is where I don't think that Donald Trump has the ability to pivot, but that is where we are. But we do know that he has sent out 3 trial balloons. He's trying to figure out what he's afraid of was, if you listen to the first rally and then yesterday too, he laid out 3 things that he's really afraid of. He's still afraid of kids in cages. He tried to pin that on Obama. He's very much afraid of COVID. He tried to paint that on the Chinese. And then he's really, really afraid of unemployment. And he's in his speech, he's saying, we will go ahead and bring unemployment back. Don't worry about it come September.
Yeah, and Anthony, the challenge that Donald Trump has right now is that if he's trying to play the role of George Wallace was not the incumbent. George Wallace was challenging the incumbent and saying the incumbent was failing and causing chaos. Donald Trump is the one presiding over chaos. So, and meanwhile, he's running against what he pretended to be, a regular guy. Adam Serwer has a brilliant piece in The Atlantic I think everyone should read, and he talks about the fact that Trump is struggling because he's running against a white guy. It's becoming clear that after 12 years of feasting on white identity politics, Adam writes, with a black man and a woman as its preeminent villains, the Republican Party is struggling to run its Obama culture war playbook against an old, moderate white guy. Here is an ad that I want to show you. This is from Unite the Country PAC, and this is talking about Joe Biden.
The 2020 economic crash. We've been through this before. Then Vice President Joe Biden oversaw the 2009 American Recovery Act. 14 million jobs created. The auto industry rescued. The longest sustained job growth in American history. With 6 million kept out of poverty and less than 1% waste. He's done it before. He'll do it again.
I mean, it doesn't really work if you're trying to pretend to be, you're playing the role of George Wallace, but you're the incumbent, Anthony.
Well, listen, it's like if Roy Cohn had a baby with George Wallace, it would be Donald Trump. And somehow magnificently got into the White House. So, but I think the president's making a big mistake. He's actually George Wallace of 1963, Joy. And that's the George Wallace that was embarrassed by the Kennedys when the National Guard came to the University of Alabama to enforce the civil rights. And so what's happening right now, the 3 or 4 of us and many others around America, there's a beautiful, colorful mosaic mosaic of Americans that are going to come together and defeat him, because he is the tyranny of the minority right now. And as a Republican, what I need to do is go into those precincts and explain to those Republicans who are moderate that he is the wrong person for America, that he's systemically dangerous to our civilized system. And we're going to do that. He's going to lose, but we can't let our guard down given those poll numbers. Do not be complacent out there. He was behind Secretary Clinton by 15 points in June of 2016. He went on to win the election, so we cannot be complacent. We have to dig in right here, right now, until the end.
Well, and Aisha, I'm sure that the White House is not complacent. The campaign cycle, they're throwing everything they can at the election, except that none of it is actually working at the moment. If you look at these polls, just going to state polls, Ohio, Biden is up by 1 point, and Trump won that by 8 points in 2016. Wisconsin, Biden is up 49 to 41 in the Marquette poll. In Texas, a state that is supposed to eventually become a purple state, but it isn't yet, Trump 44, Biden 43. You even look at how well progressives are doing in states like Kentucky. I interviewed Charles Booker earlier today on this network. He is, in a good shape to win that primary, and he's the more progressive of the two candidates. He'll understand that Donald Trump could wind up being a drag on their ability to hold the Senate.
I think at this point, they know that Republicans on the Hill know that they're tied to Donald Trump. They're tied to President Trump, and his fate is going to be their fate. And you've seen some of this where President Trump has kind of put out a warning to the Hill in other interviews, saying, "Look, don't be cool on me. Don't try to distance yourself from me, because my base is strong. You need me, and you better stick with me." So I think right now, their fates are definitely tied, and it is early. We have to say it is still June. There is a lot that can happen between now and then, and he still does have a strong base. But these polls will be worrying to any campaign, and particularly to an incumbent who had an economy, had all these things, and now just can't seem to get the wins that they want to put up. They can't get the full rallies. They can't do these things that they were doing before.
Well, he has a strong base, but it's in the 40s, and it needs to be at 50. It's 50 plus 1 to win, but we shall see what happens. Aisha Rasco, Anthony Scaramucci, Maria Teresa Kumar, thank you guys very much. Appreciate you all. And Donald Trump, meanwhile, Donald Trump's coronavirus denial, saying it's going away, as cases in the U.S. hit a record daily total of over 36,000. Plus, the former lead prosecutor in the Roger Stone case testifies on the political pressure to go easy on Trump's friends.
What I saw was that Roger Stone was being treated differently from every other defendant. He received breaks that are, in my experience, unheard of.
That on the same day that another of Trump's pals, Michael Flynn, receives a very favorable decision from a Trump-appointed judge. Much more ahead. Stay with us.
At BMW, we know leaving the road wasn't easy, but anticipating our return taught us to appreciate every drive. The exhilaration of the ultimate adventure. Moments spent with your favorite co-pilots. And the freedom to explore just because. Our time to rejoin the road is finally here. Get back on the road with 0.9% financing plus no payments for 9 days.
1 second.
Sure.
Okay. Safe driver, save 40%. Guys, check it out. Safe driver, save 40%. Safe driver, save 40%. Safe driver, save 40%. That's safe driver, save 40%.
It is. That's safe driver, save 40%.
It's right there.
It's him. He's here.
He's right here. Hi. Hey. That's totally him.
That's him.
That's totally the guy.
Safe drivers do save 40%. Click or call for a quote today.
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. Print discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/try and never go to the post office again.
What if you could cook amazing food with very little effort every night? Brava simplifies the art of cooking so that you can make time for the things that matter most. Visit Brava.com for more information.
Why would your kids need a Greenlight debit card? Imagine a debit card and app designed to help them develop healthy financial habits, to teach them how to save and encourage them to set their own goals. Now imagine the difference it could make in their lives, in their futures. Greenlight.
We're doing so well after the plague. It's going away.
Just for the record, because a lot of people don't want to report this, the reality is we've had huge declines in the case rate, okay?
Every day we're one day closer to putting the coronavirus in the past. That's what leadership looks like. That's the leadership of President Donald Trump.
No, none of that is true. Welcome back. As Donald Trump and his administration try to turn the page from the coronavirus pandemic, the U.S. recorded its highest daily one-day total with more than 36,000 new coronavirus cases. Hospitalizations and caseloads hit record highs in roughly half a dozen states. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott told local media that the state is facing a massive outbreak. Yesterday, Arizona reported a record high in new cases as Donald Trump visited a mega church in Phoenix with limited coronavirus precautions. Also yesterday, members of the White House Coronavirus Task Force had a very different message.
In some respects, we've done very well. However, in other areas of the country, we're now seeing a disturbing surge of infections that looks like it's a combination, but one of the things is an increase in community spread. And that's something that I'm really quite concerned about that.
We've all done the best that we can do to tackle this virus, and the reality is it brought this nation to its knees.
Meanwhile, as cases skyrocket in the Sun Belt, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut announced a plan to impose a quarantine on visitors from states with big outbreaks. And for more, I'm joined by Florida Congresswoman Donna Shalala, former Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Clinton administration, and Dr. Lena Wen, emergency physician and public health professor at George Washington University. Thank you all both for being here. Congresswoman Shalala, I want to play your governor, Ron DeSantis, and a trio of comments that he made, including today about the coronavirus outbreak. Take a listen.
Ultimately, we've got to trust people to make good decisions. We're not shutting down. We're going to go forward. We're going to continue to protect the most vulnerable. Go look in New York at what New York had. That's a spike. So to say that there's a spike, there's just never been a spike in Florida. It's been, relatively modest.
So June 11, June 16, and today. Those are his three sets of comments. Congresswoman, is the governor of Florida taking good care of the people of Florida when it comes to COVID-19?
Absolutely not. And he's going to be responsible for people dying because of his failed leadership. I mean, I don't know what he's talking about. Today we had the biggest number that we've ever had, 5,500 people. That's the biggest number we've had in Florida on a daily basis. This is shocking. Both the governor, under pressure, I assume, from the business community, as well as the president, who he's also following, are going to be responsible for thousands of deaths in this country because of their failed leadership. We should have hit this with a hammer from the beginning, starved the virus, then done contact tracing, and leadership would have had everybody with a mask on. Now in South Florida, the mayors have taken hold and have said everybody has to wear a mask when they go out. Unless they're doing vigorous exercising, they've got to be wearing a mask. We should have been doing that months ago, literally. This is tragic, and it's a total failure of leadership.
And Dr. Wynn, we're seeing all these videos, including some out of Florida, of people refusing to go wear masks and people resisting it on a political basis or an ideological basis. And as the Congresswoman mentioned, Tampa Bay Times has a piece out talking about the 5,511 cases as weekly death rates are averaging upward. And here's a bit from it. Florida has been tracking coronavirus cases for nearly 4 months, but about 27% of all infections have come in just the past 7 days. Wednesday was the 9th consecutive day with a new caseload above 2,000 and the 16th day now above 1,000. Florida now is one of those states that New York is saying you need to quarantine if you come from there. Given Florida's population size, which is extremely large, and given the fact that it's got the most elderly population in the country, what are we talking about in terms of potential risk? Because New York obviously had a huge outbreak. Are we looking at something on that scale potentially in the state of Florida?
We are, and not only in Florida, but in multiple other states. I'm also looking at Texas, at Arizona, Alabama, the Carolinas, and others that are seeing not only a rise in the number of cases, but also a rise in the positivity rate, which is very concerning. It means that we're not even testing all of those individuals who have the infection, and we're seeing a rise in hospitalizations. 7 states today have set a record in terms of the number of hospitalizations, and there are now reports coming out from multiple states, including in Arizona, where the ICUs are already nearing capacity. In Arizona overall, 88% of ICU beds are already full. And this is the same pattern, actually, that we saw in New York, in the New York area prior to the huge spike. And unfortunately, in New York, they were actually able to contain the virus by imposing strict shelter-in-place orders. But I can't imagine that we would be willing to do that in so many other states. And the unfortunate thing about all of this is we could have prevented it. We could have done the testing, tracing, isolation. We could have reopened more safely, but we have not, and now people are suffering the consequences.
Hey, Congresswoman, I've lived in Florida for a long time. Is Jackson Memorial Hospital, the bigger hospitals that take a lot of public patients, since Florida didn't expand Medicaid, are the hospitals in Florida ready for a huge outbreak on the level that New York had in the earliest days?
No. We're used to expansion in hospitals in South Florida because of hurricanes, and we do have plans for that. But if we're going into the scale of New York, we're going to be overwhelmed. And I just can't keep repeating, it was unnecessary. It didn't have to happen. If we had proper leadership, both at the national and at the state level, we could have clearly contained this at least to a smaller number.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to the United States. We now join countries like Russia and Brazil that are now restricted in entering the European Union because we have not contained the coronavirus outbreak. It's quite a place to be. Congresswoman Donna Shalala, Dr. Lena Wen, thank you both very much. And coming up, Attorney General William Barr is set to testify next month before the Democrat-led House Judiciary Committee. He is sure to face some pointed questions about the prosecutions of Trump allies of Roger Stone and Michael Flynn, and we'll bring you the latest on those prosecutorial debacles next.
In Peytonville, there's lots of ways to save on auto insurance.
Really?
Yep. Very proud of that. With Smart Ride from Nationwide, they can get discounts for safe driving.
Did she get one?
Mrs. Carmichael, safest driver in Peytonville. Takes a lot of work and effort to be the safest driver in Peytonville.
What about this guy?
With Nationwide Smart Miles, the less he drives, the less he pays. The list of inspiring stories goes on and on.
I bet. I've never seen anyone do more with their retirement than you.
I concur.
Irresistible from writer-director Jon Stewart.
Jack Hastings is like Bernie Sanders with better bone density.
Whatever you say, nerd.
It's Carell versus Byrne.
This is DC League trying to dictate how we should play.
That's a lie.
No.
Irresistible. Rated R. Friday. What makes you you? Your cells. Trillions of them. That's why Centrum contains 24 key nutrients to support your energy. So you can take care of what matters most. And try new Centrum Minis today.
My name is Christine Payne. I'm an associate here at Amazon. Step into the blue line, sir. This device is giving us an accurate temperature check. You good to go? I have to take care of my coworkers. That's how I am. I have a son, and he said, one day I'm going to be like you. I'm going to help people. You're good to go, ma'am? I hope so. This is my passion. If I could take care of everyone who's sick out there, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Irresistible from writer-director Jon Stewart.
I'm here trying to win an election.
Whatever you say there.
Get ready for the comedy event of the summer.
Quiet the cows, please! And if you could get some of them to face front.
Oh my God. Irresistible, rated R. Theaters and on demand Friday.
Yeah.
A lung cancer diagnosis can leave you holding your breath. But Bristol-Myers Squibb is working to change things by researching new kinds of medicines that could help you live longer, including options that are chemo-free, because we're committed to bringing new hope into lung cancer care. Learn about our lung cancer research at lungcancerresearch.com.
Can my side be firm?
And my side super soft? Yes, with the Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed on sale now. You can both adjust your comfort with your Sleep Number setting.
Time to go. Can it help me fall asleep faster?
Yes, by gently warming your feet.
But can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It intelligently senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable.
You can really promise better sleep.
Not promise, prove. And now, during the lowest prices of the season, the Queen Sleep Number 360 C4 Smart Bed is only $12.99. Save $400, only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
What do you think needs to be fixed, and what would count as justice in this case? Do you have clarity on what the president has actually ordered? I have to ask whether the Democratic Party can turn this around so that this is an engine for progressive political change. People are not 6 feet apart from one another for the most part. Are you worried that these two crises may dovetail in terms of the risk of transmission at these ongoing protests? Welcome back. On Capitol Hill today, there was some dramatic testimony about the politicization of the Justice Department under Donald Trump and his Attorney General, William Barr. Two Justice Department whistleblowers testified that Barr and other Trump appointees exerted pressure to go easy on the president's close associate, Roger Stone.
In the United States of America, we do not prosecute people based on politics, and we don't cut them a break based on politics either. But that wasn't what happened here. And what I heard repeatedly was that this leniency was happening because of Stone's relationship to the president, that the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia was receiving heavy pressure from the highest levels of the Department of Justice, and that his instructions to us were based on political considerations. And I was told that the acting U.S. Attorney was giving Stone a break because he was afraid of the President of the United States.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Aaron Zelinsky was one of the 4 prosecutors who quit the Stone case back in February after the Justice Department decided to downplay Stone's criminal conduct and reduce his recommended sentence.
What I saw was that Roger Stone was being treated differently from every other defendant. He received breaks that are, in my experience, unheard of. And all the more so for a defendant in his circumstances. A defendant who lied to Congress, who remained unrepentant, and who made threats against a judge and a witness in his case.
The Justice Department responded to Zelinsky's allegations in a statement, saying that, quote, Mr. Zelinsky's allegations concerning the U.S. Attorney's motivation are based on his own interpretation of events and hearsay, not first-hand knowledge, unquote. As you may recall, Stone was sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for lying to Congress about his contacts with WikiLeaks in regard to the release of the Russian-hacked Clinton campaign emails. And the Stone investigation is just part of a long pattern of William Barr putting politics ahead of justice, and that is next.
Okay, so let's talk home and auto bundle. We all know customers
numbers can save big. So we're talking 24/7 protection, as it... Mara, hello?
Yeah.
We can see you on your phone.
Oh, my bad. You can continue.
I think she's still on the phone.
Needles. Essential for sewing, but maybe not for people with certain inflammatory conditions, because there are options, like an injection, Xeljanz. The first and only pill of its kind that treats moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, or moderate to severe ulcerative colitis, when other medicines have not helped enough. Xeljanz can lower your ability to fight infections. Before and during treatment, your doctor should check for infections like TB and do blood tests. Tell your doctor if you've had hepatitis B or C, have flu-like symptoms, or are prone to infections. Serious, sometimes fatal infections, cancers, including lymphoma, and blood clots have happened. Taking a higher than recommended dose of Xeljanz for RA may increase risk of death. Tears in the stomach or intestines and serious allergic reactions have happened. Needles. Fine for some, but for you, there's a pill that may provide symptom relief. Ask your doctor about the pill first prescribed for RA more than 7 years ago. Xeljanz, an injection.
The New York Times Magazine, Vanity Fair, and Rolling Stone are all talking about Jon Stewart's Irresistible. It's brilliantly hilarious. Jon Stewart is back.
Are there any questions for the Colonel? Anyone? Bueller?
Jon Stewart's Irresistible. Rated R. Friday.
The ADT Yard Sign stands watch over your home and family. With tested, trusted, 24/7 protection. Now, get our lowest rate for fast response monitoring starting at just $28.99 a month, about $1 a day. Call 1-800-ADT-ASAP.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up ShipStation. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
ShipStation saves us so much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print everything you need, slap the label onto the box, and it's ready to go.
Our cost for shipping, like, we're cut in half, just like that.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
Want to eat better while staying in? Meet Freshly. We're here to help with chef-cooked meals ready in minutes. Choose from over 30 options designed by our chefs and nutritionists, and we'll deliver them fresh, not frozen, right to your door. So skip the prepping, cooking, and cleaning, and start eating healthy without the hassle of grocery shopping. Ready to eat delicious? Build your weekly menu of chef-cooked meals today at freshly.com.
Mr. Barr's actions make clear that in his Department of Justice, the President's allies get special treatment. The President's enemies, real and imagined, are targeted for extra scrutiny. And the needs of the American people and the needs of justice are generally ignored.
Welcome back. Well, that was House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler's stinging indictment of Attorney General William Barr. Instead of being the country's chief law enforcement officer, Barr's conduct frequently makes it seem like he's Donald Trump's personal lawyer. Former Deputy Attorney General Donald Ayer, who served under President George Herbert Walker Bush, outlined why he believes Barr is using the DOJ to advance Trump's political interests.
I was privileged to serve in the Department of Justice under 2 Republican and 1 Democratic president, and I am here because I believe that William Barr poses the greatest threat in my lifetime to our rule of law and to public trust in it. That is because he does not believe in its core principle that no person is above the law. He has regularly undermined the authority of independent decision-making processes and career professionals whose disinterested integrity Levy saw as a key element justifying public trust. He has done this by his own statements, such as last March when he publicly whitewashed the Mueller report's extensive findings on obstruction of justice, and last December when he publicly contradicted key conclusions reached by Inspector General Horowitz in his FBI election interference probe.
The House Judiciary Committee will have a chance to question Barr directly when he testifies late next month. And for more, I'm joined by Cynthia Altsney, a former federal prosecutor, and David Frum, senior editor at The Atlantic. And Cynthia, I want to go to you on this first. Here's an interview that William Barr gave back in February. And this was just after the Department of Justice overruled the recommendations by career prosecutors that Roger Stone needed to spend 7 to 9 years in prison. And here he is.
president has never asked me to do anything in a criminal case. I am responsible for everything that happens in the department, but the thing I have most responsibility for are the issues that are brought to me for decision. And I will make those decisions based on what I think is the right thing to do, and I'm not going to be bullied or influenced by anybody. And I said at the time, whether it's Congress, newspaper, editorial boards, or the president, I'm going to do what I think is right.
It's ironic that what he seems to think is right is whatever Donald Trump needs and whatever Donald Trump's friends would need to keep them out of prison or keep them not in trouble. I mean, it seems to me that what he said back in February was what one might call horsepucky. Your thoughts on what it is that William Barr seems to be up to?
Well, you don't have to have a conversation with Donald Trump to know what he wants. I mean, I know what he wants, and I've never talked to the man in my life because he has a running dialogue on. So that's not much of a defense for me. I sort of have two thoughts about today. First of all, it does show how cavalier they are. They're so sure. Barr is so sure that he is above any oversight that he's actually sort of cavalier about the corruption. This line attorney, line attorneys don't get to know important things like the president and the attorney general are pressuring for a certain sentencing guideline. And yet the chief of the fraud and public corruption section at the Department of Justice, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, apparently told him that. And there's a certain confidence about we're above everything in order for that to be communicated to the level of the line attorney. And I'm sure that chief is now getting subpoena. But let me just say one other thing about the Stone case, and that is, on some level, forget about it, because the president's going to pardon him anyway. I mean, I think we see that. But the damage of the Stone case is what really is important. The damage to the people's perception that when they go to a courtroom, they get a fair shake. That's so fundamental to our criminal justice system, and it's challenged in so many ways. I mean, not only just in police cases and policing and sentencing and imposition of the death penalty and all kinds of things. And now add this, and it just is undermining and so rips the fabric of our country. And that's why it's more important than Roger Stone and him going to jail. Because let's just face it, he's not going to jail.
Yeah, I mean, and the Michael Flynn case obviously is even more, I don't know which one is worse. I mean, Michael Flynn admitted to lying to the FBI, and now he's gotten to skate thanks to a Donald Trump judge, which is why people need to vote for the United States Senate, because the Senate decides who the judges are. But, I have to ask, David, what is surprising about this? Honestly, I mean, back during the George Herbert Walker Bush era, William Safire called Mr. Barr that he was the cover-up general, that he assisted in undermining the prosecutions that Lawrence Walsh tried to bring in Iran-Contra. He suggested pardons. He's been this guy since Mr. Ayer worked with him. And so I wonder what's happening among Republicans. Are they rediscovering that Mr. Barr is exactly who he was under George Herbert Walker Bush, under George W. Bush, I presume, because the unitary executive, I didn't see him jumping up saying Dick Cheney shouldn't have a unitary executive theory. He agreed with it then. What is different about him now that is so surprising to so many people?
For me, the best guidance about the whole Trump Justice Department was imparted to me before there was a Trump Justice Department on a reporting visit to Hungary early in 2016. And a wise observer on the Hungarian emerging dictatorship explained to me how Viktor Orban worked. Hungary is a member of the European Union, a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. You can't just shoot people in the street. And this observer said, in a state like Hungary, in a modern rule of law bureaucratic state, the most important power of people who would abuse justice is not the power to persecute the innocent, it's the power to protect the guilty. So in Hungary, what would happen is you would have two restaurants, both of which had some health and safety violation. One was owned by a friend of the president or the prime minister, and one was not. One was owned by an opponent. For the opponent, there would be the law. For the friend, there would be the special favor. And that has been the way the Trump Justice Department has worked. President Trump has called for persecutions of his opponents. And by and large, he's been unsuccessful. But what he has got, and especially got from Barr, is impunity for his friends, for the people under investigation of the Mueller report. He got the destruction from the cover-up, the suppression of the Mueller report, and he got redactions that were very much not driven by the need to protect national security, but that were driven by the need to protect secrets that were embarrassing to the president.
But I guess my question is, isn't that also what George Bush Sr. got from the same guy? William Barr's been doing this since the late 1980s, making sure that the president's friends, friends of Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush would not get in trouble, would not go down in Iran-Contra. This is his career. This isn't some new thing he's doing. It's what he does.
Well, this is a new thing in the history of the United States. Look, because it's not Barr alone. Barr alone could not do this. Barr has associates. People are being promoted. And we have seen attempts to change who holds U.S. attorneys' offices. Look what happened in Washington, D.C. That President Trump had an independent Washington, D.C. U.S. attorney, Jessie Liu. In order to get her out of town, Barr and Trump held out to Attorney Liu the promise of a promotion, an important job at the Treasury. She then resigned, and the moment her resignation was in hand, they yanked away the promotion. They tried that same trick on Jeffrey Berman. They offered him, maybe you'd like to be head of the Securities and Exchange Commission. All you have to do is resign. He didn't do it because he'd seen before that the promise had been yanked away. So there is a new and more coordinated strategy to get control of the U.S. attorney's offices and to use them to protect Trump's friends and maybe someday President Trump himself.
And very quickly before we go, Cynthia Oxney, as he does just do whatever it is that he thinks Donald Trump wants, he just assumes he knows what he wants. So Donald Trump has said very clearly he would like his former national security advisor, longtime Republican donor and friend, John Bolton, to go to prison. Do you see that William Barr has it in him to do that for Donald Trump?
No, I do not. And let me tell you something. I think everybody is very disheartened by the Flynn dismiss the writ of mandamus today to dismiss the Flynn case. That is not over. It very well may be heard by the Court of Appeals, and I would suggest that finally Sullivan is going to give that hearing, because it's a very unusual opinion, and not to give up hope, we're still going to get that information.
All right, we shall see. Cynthia Oxney, David Frum, thank you both very much. And coming up, the Republicans' police reform bill is blocked by Democrats who describe it as toothless. At this point, is the best chance for meaningful reform out of Washington a new Senate? Stay with us.
I like Liberty Mutual. They get that no two people are alike. And customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. What do you think?
I'll see it. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. You hear that? That's your weather deck crying for